And that pipeline for traditional Linux has always been broken. It's never been good, which is why there's exactly 0 traditional Linux distros that have made it into the mass market. The closest we ever got was Ubuntu. We know that model doesn't work, right? But you see Android, you see Chrome OS, you see all these other successful, every $20 IoT gadget I bought is more reliable than a traditional Linux, right? And that infuriated me.
Hey guys, it's Trafotin. I recently had the pleasure of interviewing Jorge Castro. George has been working with Linux for over 30 years and has previously worked with Canonical. Now, he works with the Cloud Native Computing Foundation and is part of the Linux Foundation, connecting developers and managers together to make networking better for everyone and set an overall standard for everyone in the ecosystem. He's also one of the project leads for Universal Blue, a series of Fedora ISOs hoping to overturn the Linux desktop model. We got to have a little chat and hope you guys enjoy.
Yeah, so I'm one of the maintainers at Universal Blue, which makes Aurora, Bazzite, and Bluefin. And I'm hanging out with you today, and we're going to talk about Linux.
I don't remember the timeline exactly. I think it spans a year and a half. Okay. If you remember, I don't know how much you remember. A year and a half. Okay. I was one of the first people to witness was it the alpha Universal Blue before it was ready for the public.
Well, it has been 3 years. It
was a year and a half ago.
So it was definitely before we went GA.
Yeah.
So yeah, probably one of the alphas. Before or after Homebrew?
After.
Okay. All right.
So it was probably I want to say October last year, I think.
Oh, okay. All right. That's not that bad.
Yeah. Or the internet will probably correct me.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I think that's when we originally wanted to launch. We originally were going to launch it for Fedora 37.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because check this out. All the Fedora specs said that all this stuff was going to be ready for Fedora 37. Now we're on 42.
Yeah. For
that's
the next
open source software estimation.
Well, as of recording, the 41 has just come out.
Yeah, yesterday. Congrats, everyone.
I don't know if you remember, I was issue 100 exactly.
Oh, actually,
on GitHub. Although I think a lot of those issues got archived because
probably
because of the restructuring of the project.
Oh,
right. So they're probably it's probably in a discussion somewhere.
They're still there. We'd have to dig.
Yeah, I think it's in a discussion because a lot of that part of GitHub changed, so now it's at the GitHub discussion.
Yeah.
What was it? At the time, I said, the process of building your own image needs to be simplified. Guess what? I still haven't learned. I'm terrible.
Oh,
I'm terrible.
Well, that's great. You learned your first lesson. The thing is one of the reasons I call this cloud native is I think a lot of people go into it with that kind of traditional Linux mindset, which is I'm going to make the perfect thing for me, right? And our project was started by cloud native people. And our default is different from that. Our default is who makes the best one of these. And then we're all going to use that. And then we're going to figure out how to tweak all the parameters so that everyone can get what they want. So I think a lot of people, they're just jumping into the system first, right? And then they just want to start off building the hot rod, where it's also just drive other hot rods for a while. And then you're going to figure out what you really want. And then for 95% of people, they just need a better base image. They don't need a custom image, right? Because you want your packages, you just don't want them on the image or in the OS layer, which is like the pattern that we try to kind of, I guess, evangelize for, right? Because that's the world we came from. You got to keep the core small, which is very ironic because our images are actually pretty huge, but conceptually, we want to shrink those down.
Right. Hardware enablement.
Yeah, sometimes it pulls in a depth that you don't want, that kind of stuff. Or it's like, well, we could add this, it pulls it, but in order to make it smaller, we'd have to redo all the packaging, and you got to do that in Fedora, and you're just like, you know what, it's fine. Bluefin, I think, is 1% of a modern disk, if you buy a terabyte drive. So we don't sweat it too much,
Yeah.
But those are getting better over time.
I do have a lot of older devices, which I think would have trouble because I have
Yeah, which
one computer of 64 gigs of memory.
64 gigs. Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yep.
it's
There's only
definitely.
64 gigs of storage.
Oh, storage. I thought you said RAM. I
Oh
was like,
no,
oh
no,
man, that's yeah.
storage.
So in that case, the method could work. It just wouldn't be one of the images that we make.
Right.
That's one of the things I wanted to make originally was make a perfect thing for Chromebooks because I want to compete with Chromebooks.
Yeah.
Um, but then the Ultramarine folks are just doing such a good job. I was like, yep, they got that. Not my problem. Because I kind of had my own. Yeah, I'm constantly busy. I have an 8-year-old, and it was like, oh,
Yeah.
I'd love to tackle this thing, but yeah, they got Bluefin working on a Chromebook, which is pretty cool.
Didn't have any. Well, you have to do the whole thing of core boot, right?
Yeah,
So
they do the whole.
you have to poke the screw in the back of the.
Yeah, you got to do whatever thing though. But someone should definitely check it out. I'm surprised it doesn't get as much um, coverage as it does because repurposing that whole hardware, but putting the Linux that we want on them, would be amazing. You know?
Especially when there's been a lot of changes around Chrome OS that have made that
Yeah,
harder.
yeah. So I actually also cycled away from like the Chrome OS competitor thing when my really big issue is so I have a kid in school and by the time the Chromebooks were getting to the schools, they were already like there was like a year left on their support.
Yeah.
Um, which was I thought was absolutely ridiculous. But
Because they only have it was like 2 or 3 years, I think.
well, recently they committed to 10, and once they
Right.
did that, I was like, okay, I'm not in a rush anymore. And Ultramarine seems to be doing a great job. So
Yeah.
and then Bazzite blew up and kind of picked our fate for us, so it doesn't matter what.
I'm literally making a
Uh,
video about the nonsense that people have to deal with schools
oh yeah, yeah,
because I've had to go through a fair share of this myself,
yeah.
mostly with daycare facilities.
Mm.
I actually have a whole thing specifically about daycare. But probably goes beyond top the scope of here.
Not a custom image that.
No, no, no,
Yeah,
because they don't require you to use a computer. That's not the problem. The
yeah.
problem is more phones.
Mm,
That's the real thing, and that's what
mm,
just sort of write about my 4 years of survival at a daycare.
yeah. Mm.
Um, but yeah, I wanted to ask because I feel like this doesn't get asked a lot of you. We
Yeah. All right.
chatted a little bit. Is the Cloud Native Computing Foundation?
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of people don't think about it
yeah,
or even notice the big thing of text that says it's part of the Linux Foundation on the
yeah,
website.
yeah. Kyle works for Microsoft, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, we've been pretty transparent about our entire project. This
So
entire
for
platform
reference, Kyle is the
is the lead Bazzite.
yep.
uh, yeah, yeah. He's one of the few folks that started off doing hobbyists with open source, and then used that knowledge to like apply for a Linux job, and then got one. So he works on Microsoft Linux team. They're one of the best in the industry, so it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's kind of like I don't know if you've read the mission statement and stuff like that, but for uBlue, part of our goal is to give people who are enthusiasts who don't have an on ramp into the professional lifestyle, I guess,
Yeah.
right? Um, because when I was growing up in open source, I was the enthusiast Linux desktop kid, right? Who didn't understand
Right.
how any of this stuff goes. So, eventually you're just like, I'm tired of reading Reddit. Like these people have no idea how open source works. So why don't we just show them what open source looks like, right?
Yeah.
And then, be a little bit more explicit about it. So that's why we
Well, what do
really
you think
concentrate.
the internet
Oh,
gets
sorry.
wrong about open source?
I don't know. I think if I read one more conspiracy theory about GNOME, I might lose this. I might lose my shit. Or whatever I think people into, and then you read on Reddit, they're like, "This is such huge drama." I was like, "This is only drama. This is only drama."
Well, you don't want to hear about a laptop maker in the United States suing core boot?
So I heard I was like, there was a core boot thing, but there's a WordPress thing too. There's always a thing.
Well, the
But
WordPress one does actually have tangible impact on
yeah,
how
yeah,
people
man.
pick their software, especially if you're
Yeah,
an admin.
yeah. That one, I did not have that one on my bingo card, right? Linux users arguing about Wayland and X and Reddit, definitely on the bingo card.
Yeah.
But like WordPress foot gunning, not on was not on my window. All right. Although I use one, ghost.org I've been using for a while.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
full open source, you can
I
self-host them.
have looked and
Yeah.
thought about it for a while.
Yeah.
Because I know
I
they
love
have like a
Ghost.
membership thing and stuff you can set up, but I never.
Yeah, yeah. Newsletters, like
Yeah,
it'll do all that for you. Yeah, I love it. I don't blog as much as I should, but um
I've thought about that, but
mm.
I don't. It was a struggle just configuring Nginx on my thing, and it's still not a Docker container. It kills me.
There's no Ghost Docker container?
No, not my website.
Oh,
My website is
no.
just a Hugo website. But I
Oh,
can't find this right. But I can't find this out how to set up Nginx correctly. No one
oh,
talks
we could
about it.
we could get you someone to hook that up. I don't know, it's yeah, I've got hundreds of people who could do that in 20 minutes. So
Because like
we'll
I'm
figure that
just
out.
like, what do I need to do in the container file? And then it just stops. Everything on the internet stops. No one tells you what to do. It's just
Yeah.
total radio silence, or guides that just don't help or are outdated.
Yeah, yeah. We'll talk. Hey, audience, have the audience that this video gets X amount of likes. And we're gonna find out. You gotta have metrics in your open source work for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm pretty busy at the day job, which is the CNCF, which is an organization that hosts open source projects. We have over 200. The famous ones being like Kubernetes, Kubeflow, Prometheus. If you actually go to landscape.cncf.io, you will see 200 some logos of organizations and projects and stuff. The way the CNCF works, it was started, I don't know, I want to say 2016, 2017, when Google wanted to donate Kubernetes, which is this one, to the
Yeah.
uh, to the community, but they wanted to do it in a way that was vendor neutral, right? So the way the CNCF works is when projects get donated, they donate the trademarks and stuff like that to the Linux Foundation, and then all the vendors play in those projects, um, and then we kind of ensure that it's like a neutrally hosted thing,
Right.
um, so that anyone can build it. So no one can change the license, that kind of stuff. So we actually, janitors, we're like janitors. You know,
I
we just
mean,
kind of
as a
hold the
reminder,
stuff.
Google does pay money to the Free Software Conservancy.
Yeah, yeah. Google's a platinum member. You can see all the members there. They're. Uh, so what happens is all of the member companies they donate to the pool of the CNCF, and then we handle, events, shepherding the projects, things like that. And then I'm a staff on the projects team, so I
Yeah.
work with projects all the time. Uh, so when projects come in, they come in at a sandbox, they go to incubating, and then they go to graduated, which is a different maturity level. So the way it works is when people look at CNCF projects, they expect a certain level of maturity standards, blah blah blah. So when a project is new and people are coming up with ideas, like it's moving pretty fast, it gets put in the sandbox, and then when it meets a certain criteria, it goes to incubation, and that criteria could be everything from you have to have neutral governance. Um, you got to start doing your OpenSSF process, which is all that security scanners and all that stuff. You got to do that. You have to have a well and clear defined contributing guide, documentate like all the kind of stuff that a community would say what makes a good open source project. The CNCF kind of codifies into these three levels. And then projects come in at the sandbox and eventually they graduate. So Kubernetes was the first one because it was the first one, but every KubeCon, which is coming up here in Salt Lake City in 2 weeks, there's projects that are moving levels. So some are moving from sandbox to
What do projects usually
incubation.
look like?
They're all cloud native projects. So actually, let me look at the landscape here.
Maybe even lower than that because I don't know this industry at all.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so Kubernetes itself is similar to Linux in a lot of ways. First of all, the level of stats, numbers, like the amount of pull requests, activities. Kubernetes, like only Linux is usually like higher, like by a lot, but Kubernetes is still high. It's kind of like the kernel, right? In that way for this entire industry.
Yeah.
So the way it works is you have racks of servers, right? And Kubernetes is distributed computing, so it turns all of those into clusters, basically, right? And then this is how people do things at scale using containers, right? Because you have VMs, and then like you can only fit so many on a machine, right? But containers are way more efficient, so you can pack way more workloads onto one server. They call that density, right? And with containers, the reason people love them over VMs is you got really, really high density, right? And Kubernetes makes it easy to just, I have an app, let's say your blog, and then you throw it at Kubernetes, right? And then it figures out what pod it lives in, on what host, what the network, like you don't do anything. It just kind of manages for you. And then it just returns a URL to you and you go there, right? The cool thing about Kubernetes though, is it handles a lot of things for you, DNS, blah, 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 blah. So let's say your website gets like really popular, or the server that the website is on crashes or whatever. Somewhere, another machine, sometimes you don't even know where it is, or pod gets fired up, and another instance of your website came up.
But it selectively turns it on and off when you need it.
Up to you. So usually what we do is you stick a load balancer in the front. You always run 3 things of an app, right? And then it makes sure that none of them are ever running on the same host at any time. Right. And then when a server monkey like me comes along to like, and I pull the plug because I got to update the server, like the service stays up, right? What happens is another node gets fired off somewhere. So that's how we do like rolling upgrades and clusters, which is kind of how we're doing it on desktop now, right? Is you take X amount of machines and you have them on like the more aggressive version, right? And then as those tests come back and you see that it's pretty good, you increase the amount of upgrades, and you could do a totally rolling desktop upgrade if you want.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we try to fake with
like the micro OS kind of model.
Because
micro OS is
this is the Eon one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Eon now, right? Yeah. No, I mean the file system ones are totally different from this, but I mean they look a lot similar. Like if you sat on a plane next to me and I was using Eon or Bluefin, you couldn't, other than the artwork, you couldn't tell them apart. You use them the same too, right? You have containers, you have flat packs. So in a lot of ways, they're like, you could look at them and say that's the exact same operating system, but they're put together different. They're different distributions, different release patterns or whatever, but most people probably don't care. But we try to be pretty specific about it because the cloud native aspect is what's important to us, because that's what lets us move relatively quickly compared to the amount of people that we have.
Yeah. And what is it like being part of the Linux Foundation, like as a project?
It's just a job. I don't know. I go to work. I work with cool people, It's pretty cool. So a lot of it is, so if Kubernetes is that kernel, those other 199 projects would be like applications, right? Actually, think of it this way. The CNCF is like FlatHub, but for cloud native. That might be.
But for all the ideas of cloud native.
Yeah. So if you go to see, like you see all those logos, you can click through. It'll tell you what it does, and a lot of it is probably really confusing if you're a desktop person. But as you start to learn containers and all that kind of stuff, some of that stuff there is very interesting to you because it will also make your desktop life better. Like let's say you wanted to host your own custom image of uBlue, but you wanted to do it on your own hardware, right? You need a registry to service to yourself, right?
Right.
Registries like the cloud native equivalent of like an Nginx. Its job is to serve stuff, right? So in the CNCF, there's multiple registries. There's one called ZOT, Z-O-T, and then there's one called Harbor, and I think there might be another one. I don't even know what they all are. And you're like, oh, okay, so I have 2 options of a registry that I can use to self-host my stuff. And that the license is going to be fine. And, you're not going to wake up one day and there's like it's gone proprietary or anything like that, right? Because they've been donated to the CNCF. All of that stuff is written down so everyone kind of knows, and that just helps you make better decisions in open source, right? Just like when you're like, oh, I found a thing. Oh, it's an Apache project. Okay, they kind of know what they're doing and have proven so over the past 20 years or whatever. Actually, it's probably 30 or 40 years by now.
One of the oldest, right?
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's when projects get together and they decide this is a current governance model or whatever, and users prefer that, right? Because like if you're at work and they're like, you could use the CNCF project at work, no problem. That kind of gives you the whole smorgasbord there.
By users,
Right?
you just mean other admins for.
Yeah, well, you in open source, like you just can't run what you want on your infrastructure. You have to get like approval, right?
Right.
So by being involved in this kind of community that kind of gives people assurances, there are organizations that say CNCF projects. I don't even have to ask for permission. I can just use them because the company trusts them. There's that level.
They want to see
thing.
big names on that list.
Right, exactly. So that kind of shared trust, that I guess the kind of motto, and we try to do this in uBlue too, is like stronger together, right? Like you're better off tackling a problem as a group, especially the long term. So we try to think long term instead of short term.
Yeah.
So the mantra there is like, if you want to move fast, go by yourself, right? If you want to go far, go together. So that's kind of the mantra we try to take, right?
Yeah. So one of the things, at least, that I was thinking about was like the base images. How did the idea of like the base images of Universal Blue get started?
Yeah. So the first one I made was actually Bluefin, which back then was just called Ubuntu, because all I wanted was Ubuntu. I just wanted my Ubuntu desktop on Fedora, so I had to deal with a Firefox snap launching in 35 seconds or whatever stupid thing it was doing that day. And I was like, oh, but like, I don't want to change any of the rest of my operating system. So it was called Ubuntu. And I remember because our project started in the Fedora Discord, actually. And I showed it to someone and they're like, oh, what's the big deal? I hate GNOME. And it's like, oh, I don't know. I got to make crap, and like, because you need contributors, right? And
Right.
but I didn't know how to make like base images in a way that was reusable, right? I had cobbled together a thing and I gotten it to work, but it wasn't enough. But then I had some friends who were like actually pros at this stuff. They're like, what you need to do is you make base images for each one of these desktops, put them in a for loop, and then you just make those base images.
So when you build the images, they all get built with the corresponding.
Yeah, exactly. And then when I want to build Bluefin, I say from that base image, now do Bluefin. Now the Bluefin container image is just the sprinkling that I want on top instead of it. We split it, right? It's kind of separation of concerns.
Yep.
So that's why our UDEV rules and stuff are like in a separate package called config. So if you want like if you want better controller support or whatever for your custom image, you just pull that in. Although we put that in the base image. Those are pretty basic.
The UDEV rules for Xbox controllers and Steam controllers.
All of that stuff. Yeah. Because they're just Git repos. So we just check them out every night. And then we do add a gate, right? So if like some bad UDEV rule gets in there. So we have to go check the versions every once in a while. But it's just one of those things I was like, I don't understand. The Steam controller, it's Linux friendly. And it doesn't work out of the box. Like that sucks. It sucks.
It's like Steam itself.
Yeah. And then we have an AK mods repo where we build a bunch of third-party modules. And we got a bunch in there. ZFS, which we ship ZFS on Bluefin and Aurora.
Really?
Yep. The VL2 V2L feed
V4L2 loopback.
Yeah, that was one of the first things we built.
I'm using it right now.
Yeah, because I have OBS. I don't want to build that crap by hand. That's stupid. I'm not doing that. That's so a lot of the stuff we make in uBlue was like, that's absurd. Only people that use Linux think this is a good idea. So we just go in there and we started fixing them.
I actually switched to the base Universal Blue image for Silverblue, like the uBlue Silverblue image, NVIDIA image. So just the bare solid bare vanilla Universal Blue image. But it was when I started using that image, got a greater sense of appreciation for all that goes into making something like Bluefin or Aurora and Bazzite, because there's a lot of stuff that I had to layer myself or that was missing.
Yeah it's actually controversial at the time, because so we make the base images, but they're designed for you to build your own image, build your own Bluefin, right? And for a time, there was parts of the community who was like, they were all about the base images, right?
Yeah.
Because again, I think I mentioned this earlier, is when people start getting into these systems, they're like, no, I want my own individual thing.
Right.
I don't want blue. I don't like dinosaurs or whatever the reasoning is. But then the issue becomes, if all you cater to are like distro hoppers, right? Then the only people interested in your thing are distro hoppers, and that's not good for sustainability because then nobody's going to fix anything.
It's only 3% of the population.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So we decided, most people want an end user product, so we kind of buried the base images. Like if you know what you're doing, you can find them, and if you know how to Linux already, it's basically Silverblue with like the codecs built in and like a few convenience things.
But those few convenience things, I think you're selling yourself short, because I think those few convenience things make a huge difference. Like for the person who says, I want to use Active Directory and not have to worry about it not working.
Yeah.
Right. Or someone who's, using Bazzite, I want my thing to work on a Steam Deck and have it just work.
Right. Because one of the nice things about this cloud native model, right, like when we're talking about the containers and stuff, is the image / container, the config, and the data are 3 separate things, and you manage those 3 separate things differently, right? So the image is Bluefin or whatever, but before it becomes Bluefin, the image is Fedora, and then uBlue is config. We tweak all the knobs, right? Which is adding, removing packages, and it's Unix, so copying files around, right? That's why it's bash, because we want to keep it simple. All we got to do is add, remove packages, and copy files around. So we try to keep that split so that the config becomes really important, because first of all, the amount of people that all you have to know is config is way higher than distro developers, right? So in this case, at least 10 million cloud developers automatically became distro devs overnight, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons we picked this pattern on purpose, right? It's like, if we know there's an entire multi-billion-dollar industry using this stuff, what could really use some funding around here lately? The Linux desktop.
Right.
So that was like kind of my mantra there. So it's relatively easy to do that, because let's look at Kyle. So Kyle is cloud native, but he's also a gaming Linux nerd, right? Most of the Linux nerds out there that are like you read Gaming on Linux, or you're kind of following, you watch Gardner's videos, like you're like, me, right? Like you probably have a config that's like perfect for your desktop, right? It's got the right gaming stuff.
Something like, I want to play Black Myth Wukong on Linux and have it work.
I just want the thing, right? And I consider myself well versed in Linux gaming, but also I have an 8-year-old, right? So I ain't got time to figure out. Like I go with Proton DB. If there's more than 2 things, I just forget. Like I ain't got time, So what this model does more than any other, this is why we don't call it a distro, right? This is Kyle goes to your house and gives you the hookup, right? And after you have that, he's going to maintain it for you, right? And then all you got to do is deal with the stuff that's exactly your problem, but at least your basic shit works, That's the kind of idea. So the nice thing about that is we can clone that infinite amount of times. So any Linux gamer automatically who's new starts where Kyle is, right? Now, Bazzite was 2 original folks, right? And every day they add a few, there's people coming in, they're sending a pull request or whatever. So the pattern, this is exactly what happened in cloud native and why it's a huge industry, is when you give developers efficiency, they can move way, way, way faster, right? So Bazzite only ever gets better from here, right? Like if you see the videos where Digital Foundry just did one, all of the complaints about all the stuff had nothing to do with Linux. Like they didn't mention flat packs. They don't know what immutable, like nobody cares what immutable is, like, and all the stuff, all the things that Linux people are always talking about. If you notice these channels like Digital Foundry and some of the other ones who aren't Linux channels, they hardly talk about Linux. They're complaining about the anti-cheat doesn't work.
Yep.
Right. There's a certain quirk, like on the ASUS, the quick access menu is like
some
slower.
Forms of DRM are a little weird on.
Yeah. And considering the team enabled the ASUS ROG before they even had the hardware. They work with a YouTuber like over chat to figure it out. Asus is cool though. They sent us some devices. So
Oh, really?
yeah, those will be dope. Yeah.
See if you can't get the PlayStation Portal to work.
There's only so much we can do. There's only so much we can do. Yeah. But they're gonna do ARM. They're gonna do ARM stuff. We're waiting for GitHub's ARM runners and stuff. And then I don't want to listen. A few organizations do give us hardware. Framework gives us stuff. And
Yeah.
then I buy it. I'm a Framework.
I assume Microsoft probably wouldn't give you Surfaces to test, would they?
No, but a lot of their Linux employees are either advisors or direct contributors. So like they're good.
But they know.
Yeah, they're doing a good job. Yeah. Let's see. Framework's giving us stuff. And then a lot of software. So Discourse gives us their forum for free. They have a great open source program. Cloudflare we use.
Cloudflare Pages?
No, the ISOs are on Cloudflare.
Oh, okay.
Is R2 unlimited egress. It's a great deal. It's a great product. And then GitHub. And there's a few projects that we use. Dosu.dev, which is our issues bot, was donated by that company. So they're pretty cool. Usually if you run an open source project and you need stuff, just Google open source projects for, and there's companies who will give you stuff. Like if you want, definitely sign up for that stuff.
Yeah. Like one of the things that actually got me thinking when I started mine is, all right, so I did a stream a while ago. I was testing some stuff. I found out most of the stuff off of the stream. Really funny, because that's how life works, I guess. But there are a lot of people online that I've noticed, and you've probably noticed too, who say that you can't change anything, and you can't change anything in, I don't know, but Bluefin.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But then I started reading, or Silverblue as a whole, right? But then I come across this page in Fedora's documentation. It's hidden away, and it's even really vaguely worded that says you can write in more you can overwrite some folders, for example, /etc.
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. And then I found out when I was installing DaVinci Resolve, oh, guess what? The /opt folder is also whitelisted from this as well. So I was like, oh. Yeah.
So it actually ends up, a lot of people, this is what's frustrating when dealing with like desktop people, is just about everything on your Linux system has an override, right? Like if you look in the systemd and the XDG documentation, so user share, you can do in .local share, right? We ship our configs for like Bluefin and stuff and /user/etc, which is read only.
Yeah.
Right. And when you edit a service, like so in the old ways, in the package-based distributions, if you want to edit a systemd service file, right, I would just edit, user share systemd system or whatever.
When you could have just been doing etc systemd.
Yeah. Or you could type systemctl edit service name, hit enter, do what you got to do. It'll save it in the right path. Like you don't even got to care. You're done, So I think a lot of like when people get frustrated about like they're trying to write stuff so they just don't know that you can override. Like I wish more technical YouTubers would have that, because even if you're not using one of these systems, if you're using it on a regular Ubuntu machine, do it that way so you keep a pristine copy of the stock config file on your system. So when you inevitably fat finger the local one, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And at that point, like a friend of mine said it best, you're in /user. Like, what are you doing there?
Right.
Like what happened in your life?
You can build even
Friday
flat
night
packs
you're
in
like,
your home folder.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the people, especially the ones that, us being cloud native people who are most used to a more professional mindset, right? It's like you kind of come back and you realize it's like, oh man, we really lost our discipline around here, because even old Unix would serve you /user over the network, even read only. Like old Solaris machines, I used to do labs at universities and stuff. Like having /user as read only is not new. The thing's been around forever.
Right.
Actually, most Linux systems in the world have that kind of thing. It's the Android phone. So like it's not uncommon, right? And every Linux device in your house, all that stuff, they all look this way, right? They have a system image, then they have the config, and then they have your data, right? The stuff that has all your stuff, right? And it's the same thing on cloud, mobile, and now desktop, right? What we didn't have is the tools to make a desktop in that style, right? And RPM-OS tree /bootsy is what we needed in order to bring those cloud native people in, because if all you need is a Docker file, then Universal Blue, we have something like over 200 drive-by contributors, but at any given time it's 5 people, some who rotate in and out. We have this concept called chill ops where people can just go, so like there's really only ever 5 people on duty at any given time, and we built this entire thing. And the best part is anybody can build one of these, and they can start where we are now. You don't have to start from scratch. So, I kind of see it more as a movement towards that style of system than an individual distribution. That's why we don't say distribution. We don't say immutable. We don't say any of that. Don't say any of that stuff. We just say,
well, on that topic.
Yeah.
Do you think a lot of those terms have just become muddled because of failed attempts in the past?
No, I think, I think it's like, I get it. Like my first list was called the awesome immutable list, right? Like a lot of this is like my fault, but as you go through and you figure it out, because once, when I started, the cloud native container thing wasn't even around yet, right? So I'm trying to make sense of this thing. And also I got stuck in the back of the bus with Richard Brown at a KubeCon. He does Eon. And we were talking about it everywhere. We were like, man, doesn't it suck how much Linux sucks? And like our biggest problem is users don't like reliable computers. Yeah, it's like, yeah, man, that sucks. So I remember we're back in the bus and we were just like, somebody should just fix this shit. And he was like, I'm doing it. But I never thought I was going to do that, right?
Yeah.
It was like, okay, so my job is to help him do
He understands. He's had to deal with Ubuntu's a leap.
Yeah. Look, every single distribution maintainer who's worth their salt, like none of this, what I'm talking about here is not controversial. It's only controversial on like the kind of enthusiast level, like I got a comment. One of my favorite comments on Bazzite. Someone was like, I tried it and doesn't feel like Linux at all. I hate it. I was like, oh, I'm putting that on the t-shirt. Hell yeah, you're right. It's not like your normal Ubuntu machine. That's for sure. Upgrades work. So yeah, like for us, it was more about enabling that pattern. Right. And I think a lot of people get it. The problem with immutable is there are correct uses of terms immutable. Like for us, it would be immutable tags. That's whether a tag changes or not when you rebase to it. And a lot of our terminology comes from Git, right? Because Universal Blue is just Git ops, right? Sysadmins using Git to fix your shit, right? So like for us, it's more about bringing that entire pattern, and immutability is just like, it's not even the important one, which is really infuriates me, right? Because it's like, can you imagine you talk to your friend? It's like, I just got a seat beltable car. It's like the greatest thing ever. You want to go sit in my seat beltable car? Right. Seat beltable cars are so great. They're weird, so I'm in a special club.
Back when you could have a seat in the middle of your front.
And then you're just like, dude, every car comes with a seatbelt. Just say car,
Right.
And you just got a brand new 911. Why don't you talk about the engine or the handling or literally anything but the seatbelts, right? But people just get so Linux,
Right.
Just can't help talking about stuff. But our systems are different because there are quote unquote immutable systems, right? Like all the ones doing file system snapshots and stuff, all of that stuff those are atomic operations, right? That means it's either 0 or 1. It's not in the middle. And that's important, and a lot of them are immutable, right? But the difference between file system snapshots and something like Universal Blue images is the difference between copying files or taking those files and checking them into Git and then doing things like forking, rebasing, rolling back, right? Whereas file system snapshots are just file system snapshots, right? And we don't really use those in these models because there's no need, right? Like that entire problem really goes away because the entire system image is one The image has one hash. It is one artifact, right? So it doesn't make sense to back any of that up. What you back up is your config and your data.
Right.
Right.
Meaning like, your documents and your music and
your
video
home
games.
directory and anything mutable, I guess. So I think a lot of people just kind of conflate it. I think the idea of having immutable distributions as a category is weird. Like sometimes you might see people do videos, they'll say, let's talk about immutable distributions. And then they compare us, Vanilla OS, Micro OS, and is there another one?
Ultramarine, maybe, but
Does Ultramarine have an image thing? They'll look at 5 different, and then they'll call them all immutable distributions.
Yeah.
But the thing is that like we have more in common with Fedora than with OpenSUSE. Like we have more in common with Fedora Workstation than anything OpenSUSE makes, whether that's immutable or not. You know what I mean? So for me, it's like, why are you lumping these together, right?
Because it makes a good top 10 list on YouTube and for a clickbait blog post.
Yeah, I get it. And it's fine. Like definitely, I was going to say don't use it, but if you use it and it gets you more views and it helps educate people, then I guess. Yeah. So for me, I don't see immutable distros aren't a SKU. They're not a product, right? Unfortunately, you kind of end up this way historically with Fedora because they had Atomic before, right? And they didn't know what to do with it and all that stuff. Whereas Universal Blue in particular, we see it as a transition, right? There's no reason. This is a one-way transition for us. This is like moving to Wayland. This is like moving to, in a lot of ways, it's part of the modern Linux, right? In modern Linux, you need Flatpaks. That's right. You need Flatpaks, Wayland, and an operating system that can upgrade way more reliably than the traditional ones. And the package-based distros have had their run. It's been 30 years. You got 3%. Great job. Like it's not going to work, right? It's not going to say how many YouTubers keep breaking their shit when they install an app, So
how many times has my system broke because NVIDIA did wanted to screw me up sometimes?
Yeah. So we'll break you differently. Your driver will upgrade correctly and your system will boot. But if you were destined to get an NVIDIA bug that day, you will. So we solve the UPS driver problem, right? It's like, this is what Upstream wants. This is exactly what you get based on these parameters and opinions that we make and, that we tell you about, do all the open source stuff, right? Our job is like done. That's our whole job, is a pipeline thing. And that pipeline for traditional Linux has always been broken. It's never been good, right? Which is why there's exactly 0 traditional Linux distros that have made it into the mass market. The closest we ever got was Ubuntu, right? So we know that model doesn't work, right? But you see Android, you see Chrome OS, you see all these other successful, every $20 IoT gadget I bought is more reliable than a traditional Linux, right? And that infuriated me, So when we got the idea to do that, the pattern, it's like, that's it. So I am all in on Flatpaks, Wayland, the whole thing. And then we just decided, because Fedora's problem is they have to convince everybody that this is a good idea, right?
Because they're setting the trend for Red Hat and the greater Linux ecosystem.
And they're a general purpose distribution, right? They can't say stuff like, we are getting rid of Fedora Workstation and moving to Silverblue in 2 years, and if you don't like it, don't use it. They can't say that,
right?
But I can.
There are people who have development servers on Fedora, or for people who run Fedora on their desktop, or for people who use Fedora IoT, or
and they're your existing users. You can't screw them, right? Which is why we're an independent project and we're opt-in, right? We're like, look, if you just want to start with the next generation Linux and skip the old generation, delete half the internet that you need to. Oh, here's another one when people are like, the problem with these new immutables is when someone has a problem and they search on the internet, they're not going to find it, right? And my attitude is good, because we remove, having I'm 0.01% of the Ask Ubuntu.
Oh my gosh, I have
Karma pool or whatever.
I have a hilarious story about ask Ubuntu and that specifically. So
Oh, good,
a
good. Ask
couple
me about
years
that.
ago,
Yeah,
I had to help a friend. He had a very weak computer. It was like not a Chromebook. It was an
yeah,
Asus Windows machine, completely dead, ran out of space. It only had 32 gigabytes of memory, so when Windows was on it, it could only be Windows and nothing else. You couldn't even
gotcha.
install Windows Update. That's how little memory it had,
Nice.
because it caps out at 27 plus 8, and then it couldn't get past the plus 8 because 27 plus 8 is more than 32.
Got you.
So I was like, oh, we can't update. So I said, why don't we put Ubuntu on here? Just give it a shot. And then all of a sudden, he now has 23 gigabytes on his computer. I'm like, oh, that's nice. But then I come back to him a couple months later, and I found out that he installed. He was like, hey, I was trying to install like Steam and Wine, like through apt.
Uh-huh.
And this is like, and when I tried, now I can't update my computer. It just gives me when I go to the update manager, it
Yeah,
gives me this warning. So I look, and it's because he followed old advice to install the 32-bit libraries
yeah.
onto his Ubuntu machine. And this was Ubuntu, I want
It's
to say
awful.
Ubuntu
Yeah,
1704 or something. And the way you did it, like in 2011, to install like the 32-bit libraries is not the same as it was
yeah,
in 2017.
yeah, yeah. I don't want to do any of that anymore. Hey, I did my bit for the package based. You know, I think one of the reasons that's cool because a few friends that helped me start this, we're all at Canonical together. Um, is we get to start over. You know, and it's like we know it's opt in. We're going to be opinionated about it, which is great because that's how cloud native is, right? So a lot of stronger together. You know, like a lot of our mantra, the way we make Universal Blue comes from that kind of mentality, right? We're looking for users that have that kind of bias for action to get stuff done, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the criticism that you read, they're like, well, the problem is then I have to use Flatpak and then I can't do
But I
this. And I
can't
was
use
like,
River.
well, then you better get to work. Or at least work harder than me at it. Let's go. Like, you know, we try every day to get another portal going, right? Like all of the things that you gotta get fixed, right? But you can't get the Linux desktop of your dreams if people can't upgrade their computers. You know, like like that part has to be at least as reliable as a Chromebook because that's a $200 device. Whether you like it or not, that's the bare minimum. You know what I mean?
The last thing people want is their computer to be a
Yeah,
paperweight.
exactly. And no amount of well, it's a user's fault for not patching out their old releases.ubuntu.com URL or whatever thing Linux
But they
can
didn't comment out that apt-d
Yeah,
repository.
yeah, yeah. Someone was like, you know what sucks about these things is, you can't add third-party repos. You can't do this. You can't
But you
do
can.
that. And
I
then they
did.
list every little thing they list is like the worst parts of Linux that we're purposely trying to get rid of. So that's a kind of
But the thing is, even I've
criticism I love.
installed third-party repos in Bluefin. I
Yeah,
ins-
but you're not supposed to.
Oh, I know.
Don't worry,
It's
I'm going to
because
turn
a
that
lot
off.
of the applications they just require root access. So like
Yeah,
there's just no way around it. Like if you
yeah,
use VPN software, right?
yeah.
You
Well,
have to
that's why we
use
include Tailscale.
yeah,
There's an unofficial flat pack of Mulvad, I think it is.
the browser, I think. It's Proton VPN you're probably thinking of.
Oh, is it Proton V? It has a flat
Yeah,
pack
Proton
of
VPN is an
VPNs. Yeah,
unofficial flat pack and SUSE package.
yeah. So all we got to do is convince them to take it over. So
Good luck convincing them to move away from outdated versions of Qt though.
it's okay.
It's
There are
been a
plenty
boon
of
it's been a
Proton.
boon for them for a while because
There.
when Wayland was starting to actually get good on desktop,
Uh-huh.
a lot of their applications had trouble running on Wayland without arguments. So like to run like Proton Mail Bridge,
Oh, okay.
you have to run of extra arguments, right? So and even with the Flatpak too, there's just no way around it because they just weren't
Hmm.
ready for it.
Yeah, luckily there's plenty of VPN
But
vendors.
also, I want to remind everybody, Proton only has 4 people who work on Linux for them. Like
Oh, wow.
it's like not even on one hand, like of the number of people
Whoa.
who work on Linux for them. And I
They
think
better get their flat
once,
pack into shape so we can hand it to them with a bow on it. That's what I need you all to do
right.
out
And I think but that's what I think is frustrating. If they were more open about that, I think, like, because they admitted it on a Reddit thread.
Yeah.
If you actually told, I mean, it doesn't. I guess they don't do it because it would sound bad. But like, if people knew, like how
Yeah.
few people actually work on it, it's a miracle that Proton VPN is able to operate at the scale that it does,
Mm,
with the number of people who work on it. Like,
I don't know. I use Tailscale.
yeah,
I'm good.
there's a way to get. Yeah, truthfully, I've never tried a whole lot with Tailscale.
Yeah, you can buy Mulvad through it as well. That gives me my endpoints, but
I send the money in the mail, so
yeah.
yeah, it's actually that this whole thing is the reason why I don't use Proton VPN, because I just
Look at that. See, I did you a favor.
yeah.
Yeah, so a
'Cause-
lot of it, that's interesting that you mentioned that, because a lot of people are like, you're hurting adoption, blah 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 blah. But like I said, I don't work for a distro. I used to work for a distro, and kind of listening. It's like, if you want to make something that's like is actually going to change how we use Linux, like, I personally, I don't speak for the whole team on this, because obviously Bazzite, Bazzite has app in it, like they layer stuff, crazy kids. Um, but like for me, is if an application doesn't work right in Wayland, or it doesn't have a well-maintained Flatpak, I am totally okay with that, right?
yeah.
95% of my life is in a web browser. I'm a GNOME person, so all of my apps, all the cool apps I read about GNOME on OMG, Ubuntu, or any enthusiast site, already on FlatHub,
Yeah.
right? So there are definitely some problem kids, right? Like, if you don't know how to IDE properly or whatever, and like OBS works great for me as a Flatpak, right? But there's certain
It's
people who
the
need a certain
intent.
plugin, like, and you get that, right?
Yeah.
And that's why the other compromise that we ship is you get DistroBox, right? So just run whatever you want. I don't care.
With some limitations that may not entirely be known by the contributors, because that's just how it is. Like, I encountered a thing where what was it? The desktop browser URI protocols don't work on KDE with DistroBox, but just KDE can only work fine. I'm not. It's
no idea on that one.
You're familiar? Are you familiar with that browser URI protocols?
I know what it is, but I don't know why.
Yeah, so it's basically when you click a link that says, "Oh, open WebEx" or "Open Zoom," right? There's a special URL specifically for that, and for some reason it works on GNOME but not KDE. I think it's something related to portals.
Oh, huh.
But the way portals interact with DistroBox specifically.
Oh, interesting.
So an ultra rare edge case, because I doubt some people will go that far, but it's also important.
That should work. Like, it's not an edge case as much as it is what else isn't working if that doesn't work, like that's it. I'll talk to someone. I'll find out about that one.
Yeah, I meant to. Yeah, that's really the only thing I have on DistroBox, to be honest. Like,
yeah,
aside from that, like, and maybe like Wine.
Yeah, I'm DistroBox less now.
Like Wine and Snaps, right? Don't work.
Oh,
Snaps, I guess, is not a surprise, just because
it keeps getting better by the minute.
It's container in a container, So
I don't know. Like, everyone's like, you should add Snap support. I was like, look, if you want Snaps, Ubuntu's great. Use Ubuntu. Yeah. Snaps,
but also Snaps don't work unless you use AppArmor, which is another, like, they don't work correctly without AppArmor.
Yeah, and why do you think Snap? This is only Canonical explain is like what do you?
But you have to use Canonical specific AppArmor patch to get everything to work, and OpenSUSE doesn't use it.
Oh,
right.
I'd just be like, if you want Snaps, use Ubuntu. That's probably what Mark wants anyway.
Yeah. But Arch and Ubuntu are the only ones that actually do have that patch, right? Arch, Ubuntu, and Debian are the only ones that have the patch for AppArmor. You can run
Snaps in Arch?
Yeah, but Snaps with proper sandboxing, right?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man.
So they do have Arch Linux does have the patch for Snaps and AppArmor.
I didn't know. Hey, someone post a screenshot of that.
But that patch,
people would flog them.
But that patch still has not reached upstream AppArmor, and that's the reason why OpenSUSE never adopted it.
Oh, that sucks.
But that's the only way Snaps can be sandboxed correctly, and that's why it just never took off.
Oh, I don't know. I use Flatpaks.
Yeah,
Snaps is what led me down this dark road. Anyway, look at my face. I'm so tired. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember when I tweeted it because Popey tweeted back. I was like, it
Because he
just
would.
took, I was like, it took 18 seconds or whatever stupid number it was for my browser to launch. It's been like this for 3 years. This is stupid. Or I said something like that. Yeah. And then Alan called out the actual CTO of Canonical who designed the thing. Who, as you can tell, the people who design Snap don't care what you think. Um, and they argued back and forth for a while, and I just like kind of laughed. I was like,
It
I don't
wasn't
know,
even
man.
about you. It was just.
Look, man, Firefox gives me a flat pack. I kind of moved on with life, Like, um,
I think
so
Firefox is an edge case though, because very few applications package for as many things as Firefox does.
yeah, and then after the snap, they added a deb package, right?
No, they added it back. They
Yeah,
used
that's
to
what I'm
have one.
saying. They added the deb package back, and everyone's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Why are you adding debs back? What world are we living in?" That's how much that's how much of a failure the Linux desktop is, right? When a browser, a thing, is like, we're gonna move back to traditional packaging. You're just like, wow, we really missed the boat on this one. So,
Yeah.
but that's part of the reason we want to do this, right? Because I've always felt the Linux desktop is held back by this boat anchor that is the traditional Linux distro model, right? Which we know doesn't work. I got a whole video about this because I know the comments were just hey, like, I don't care what you think.
Hey, they
No, I'm
stick
just
around for me, and I say some stuff
yeah,
that's pretty
yeah,
incendiary. I
yeah. So
frequently get
it's
told every video that I'm destroying the Linux community by telling
it's
people that
amazing.
developers deserve respect, or
Yeah,
like people need to be like paid money to
yeah.
survive.
Here's what you tell those people. You know what I tell them? This infuriates them even more. I'm giving away all my trade secrets here. See, this is the kind of mentorship you get from the CNCF. Is I look is like I read the comments and then I just reply with, "Some people deserve the Linux desktop," and I hit post, and then they just lose it. It's amazing. Um, because part of the only way you can fix this thing is to recognize that it doesn't work, man. So we kind of take the attitude of of we want to start from scratch. I want all new problems, right? Like all new problems. I'm tired. It's been 30 years. I'm tired of those problems. It's always the same ones: packages,
Yeah,
individual upgrades. Like, come on. Um, but it always felt to me like Linux desktop has this boat anchor around it, right? Where it's like you see a new user, they come into the chat channel or whatever, and all they want is to do something cool because they saw a cool screenshot, right? And there's always a well-intentioned person writing paragraph after paragraph explaining what a rolling distribution or whatever. So like, you're just like, oh my, let the person breathe for 5 minutes.
well, that's
Um,
why I locked them up to each video. You have to specifically go look for it, because
yeah,
I don't want to have to explain this stuff to people all the time.
yeah.
Like,
So for us, it's just to give people an alternative, right? Like, if you like Linux, but you hate Linux,
that's me.
like
That's
if you
me.
if you want what Linux promises, right? And the thing is, usually, the people who are like trying to do their best and be like, well, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do this. Like I totally I've been you know what I mean? But at some point you have to realize that you're making a thing that is not for you. Like you're good. If you have Arch, you got your perfect system. Ain't no one from uBlue trying to convince you to switch to a thing. I don't, it's your computer. I have better things to do. Right. But there are enthusiasts out there who want to get into Linux and they can't. Right. Because they need to start off with success. Like when I learned Linux, you had to learn Linux. Otherwise, your Wi-Fi card didn't work, right? And then that was like your badge of honor. I learned Linux. It was so
Install
hardcore.
Debian,
I couldn't
anyone?
even go online until I figured out how to compile my own kernel. That's a flex, right?
Install
It's not a
Debian, anyone? You have to get
yeah,
your Broadcom Wi-Fi card to work.
right. That's not a flex anymore. So I think for us is kind of taking like a stand for the model, right? Because someone's got to fight for the new users, right? And it's got to be people who've been around the block long enough to understand where all the landmines are, right? So in a way, we're really great for new users getting into Linux who don't want to deal with that stuff, and we're really great for experts who are pros. Maybe they work on Docker containers all day. They're infrastructure people or whatever, because they're the ones that can help us make it better for the new users, right? Usually, I find where a lot of people you get the confusion and stuff people arguing about immutable, are everyone in the middle, where like, Linux, you're pro at it, but this method is maybe new to you, right? And you're just so good at Linux that the entire concept of what Bluefin is like absurd to you, right? It's just, that's not our target audience. I think I made a whole video on why Linux people aren't the target audience, but it's fine too, because we want to help everybody. We want to give everyone that option, so we kind of try to focus on the experts setting up the new users for success.
Yeah.
And there's things like, I don't want new users to do stuff, right? Because they are, in a lot of ways, Linux client is like, we're still stuck in the starter dungeon in the video game, right? You're in an MMO and a new user comes in and you've been trying to get out of this stupid dungeon, right? It's like, hey, you don't gotta go kill 50 womp rats. I've got an extra sword here. Can we actually learn Linux now instead of messing around with all this stuff?
And then you come into the raid boss when your display manager doesn't
we're not
work.
even ready for the end game, right? Because for one of the frustrations for me is working professionally in the industry, you find out how much of open source is not built on the Linux desktop, right? It's like everything is built on Macs, right? Even the Microsoft people are on Macs. Like OS 10 with Docker is like, or sorry, Mac OS with Docker is like what people use to make infrastructure, right? And it's frustrating for me because like the Linux desktop, those developers, the users and stuff, they deserve that same level of success. We're just stuck in this past model that is outdated, that needs to be updated, right? Which is what cloud and server went through. When the container showed up, and then boom, it changed the entire industry, changed the entire world, right? And all of Linux went through that process, except for the Linux desktop, right? And it wasn't until rpm-ostree /bootsy that we can use that same model for the desktop. And that's the one thing our project does, right? Is prove that the Linux desktop can become cloud native. And by being the same as server, all the infrastructure is the same, like all the tools work. Like all the tools that we use every day for work and stuff also are now built into my Linux desktop. That's really nice. It's one of the reasons original Ubuntu server did well, because Ubuntu started off as a desktop, right? And went into Ubuntu server right before cloud got huge. And the reason Ubuntu really kind of blew up in cloud was the desktop Linux users already knew Ubuntu. So when Ubuntu server came out, that one's desktop server, same operating system, right? Yep. There's a lot of value in that. So that is something that that's the same pattern I want to bring again, right? If you mess around with a uBlue, Bazzite or whatever, if you make a custom image, you're going to learn a skill that people pay money for, right?
Right.
Like you're not going, like how many hours of my life have been wasted doing old Enlightenment dot files, like back in the day, right? But in this new model, I would still be learning config and doing all my cool desktop stuff, right? But I would just be checking it into Git. I would be building it in an image. I would be, doing all these cool things that my buddies teach me and all that kind of stuff. But you're capturing that in code in a repo, right? So uBlue, the images are infrastructure as code of the community, the gaming community, right? So the more people we get in there, the faster that accelerates. Right. So that's, sorry, I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again. So I get preachy and shit. So
no, it's fine. I do too.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's why we make it opt in, right? Because we don't need validation from traditional Linux users. First of all, that's a very small number of people that isn't really growing. And the section that is growing are gamer nerds and, pros that work in cloud and all that stuff. Like that's the target audience that we want. Because one day when there's more buy buttons on FlatHub, people like me could just keep clicking them, right? And then we can solve the actual sustainability problem with the Linux desktop, right?
Yeah.
If we make it worthwhile enough for it to sustain a community, and like look at things like Raspberry Pis and stuff like that. Like why isn't the Linux desktop feel like other successful open source projects collectively, at that level of scale, right? Obviously there's Linux YouTubers, wouldn't it be great if all your numbers had 2 extra zeros after them, right? Yep. So that's that's kind of like we're very adamant um, about fighting to make Linux easier for the common person. And the best part is like we draw so many experts that it helps us drown out the people that are trying to gatekeep or make Linux all about the elitism and stuff. Because I grew up in that era, and you don't want that anymore. Trust me. But you know more than most. So
Yeah, I remember, what was it? If you ever get I mean, this is just a project at work. Okay, someone says,
yeah,
well, the customer says, why can't you do XYZ, right? And then, but you as the person running it need to ask the question, well, what they want you to solve it this way? They say they want it solved this way, but you have to ask yourself, what kind of problem are you actually trying to solve?
yeah,
And if someone says, I don't like the Linux desktop, it's not growing, we're stuck to where we are, and there isn't a whole lot of action, And
yeah,
then, but you have to ask someone's saying, well, but what they're also saying is, I want to preserve like this old way of life, right? Because it's what I know,
yeah.
right?
This is fine because your old
Yeah,
distribution doesn't go away. You know, so you can opt in at any time, right? But for us, like there is no going back, right? For me, this is a transition for the Linux desktop. I'm I'm taking the bet, right, that this style of system will be more popular than that, and that's an obvious yes from me, you know. Whereas like Fedora has to be uh, a little bit like you can't just say we're gonna get rid of Fedora Workstation. There'd be rioting in the streets, you know.
right.
Yeah. Ubuntu can though. So when Core Desktop comes out, they'll probably do that. I'm sure they'll keep traditional one around, and companies will pay them to do that. But they'll make that at some point. You won't want to use it, right? Because all the good attention is going to the all core Snap one.
It's easier to update a snap for them than it is, yeah.
It is, it is. Like, and if you're an Ubuntu user, you should like it. So I've used Core. Um, Actually, Bluefin had already existed for a while, and Cam Van Dyne, who runs the desktop team at Canonical, stopped by, and he had a laptop. He had like some Dell, some secret Dell, I don't know. Um, and he's like, I've got Ubuntu Core Desktop. I was like, yeah, show me or whatever. So I opened it up. Unity kind of looks the
Yep.
same. I think plenty of people have run it by now. And so he goes in, and then he opens a terminal, and they had written a new terminal in Flutter, and it opened up, and a Ubuntu container opened up, and it went into Ubuntu, and he goes, yeah, we got a Lexi container here. And then the user just uses that, and they could use apt-get in there if they want. They could do all the stuff. And it was basically just DistroBox. I was like, oh my
Right.
God. Yeah. So what's really great is it looked just like Bluefin, right? It had the DistroBox Ubuntu terminal thing going. Everything is transactional. Everything, it never bothers you. It just updates in the background. Like it does all the
Yep.
things that you would want a modern device to do. Um, it was a little bit janky, but obviously pre-release hardware, pre-release software. But
It was probably the only computer running Ubuntu Core Desktop in the
yeah,
world.
on
So,
that day, yeah. But hey, I mean, we always dog food at Canonical, so everyone dog food, so that's like a good thing. But I'm looking at it, I was like, man, this is pretty good. Um, but I also knew Bluefin was already better in a lot of ways. So as soon as he left, we've been friends for a long time. I was like, looking forward to competing with you or whatever. And that's when I had the artwork for the dinosaurs and all that
yeah.
stuff already made. Um, and that's when I like sent the check that night. I was like, I don't know, should I do this? Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But I saw it, and I was like, God, this is really good. I think I can. I think I could compete with this though, because we have DistroBox with Tixis that gives you that nice container workflow that people like. It's got beautiful themes. It's all like super GTK. Christian's like a really cool.
Christian Helgert.
Yeah, it just is like a cool dude. You know, um, Love hanging out with him. Like we chat a lot. Um, about ideas around containers, because for a long time we didn't have that, and I feel like Universal Blue in general was just kind of sitting around, right? And we didn't have it quite yet,
Yeah.
like a thing that you could actually tell someone and be like, this is what I want you to use. So having that dedicated terminal was huge, because it makes all that a little bit more transparent for people.
And people can see all the containers they have.
They see everything they want. Yeah, or actually you can install Podman Desktop. You get a whole GUI. do all
Yeah.
sorts of stuff. You could delete everything. And then someone made that Box Buddy app is pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a little GUI thing, so you can like export that old app that only comes in a deb, right? But you need it. I get it,
Right.
right? So you
My
install
only
it. Your
gripe with
distro.
Box Buddy is they don't have a button to update everything.
We do that for you anyway, I think.
Yeah, no, yeah, you guys do, but they don't,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh
Because they don't have a thing that runs DistroBox upgrade all,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Huh.
But
Didn't think
if
about that.
you
Yeah.
run Top Grade, which is pre-installed in Universal Blue, it
What a
just
great tool, huh?
yeah, it just
Yeah.
updates everything from your RPM OS tree, your Flatpaks,
Yeah.
your Python packages.
It's like I have an old machine that I think I carried around the dot files, like multiple installations for years, and I ran top grade, and there was stuff in there I forgot gotten them. Right after you run top grade is when you go delete a bunch of stuff.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that's something we try to do. We don't try to make custom tools because I think making distro tools is a waste of time. So
But what about Yafty?
so yeah, I'll get to Yafty in a second.
Okay.
But the other one, the one I want to mention, the first one we picked was Just, right? Because it's like it's tempting to make Bluefin Cuddle, right? Or uBlue CTL or whatever. Um, because everyone's got to have their own package manager. And I didn't want to do any of that. But like some of these RPM OS tree commands are a little obtuse, you know? So on servers, something I learned with cloud is this tool called Just, which is just shared aliases, right? In a file, and you can do it per directory or whatever. So we just got the idea. Let's just have community shared aliases for things that are convenient. So you just update was the first one, which runs the RPMS tree update, that runs the Flatpak updates, updates brew. It basically just runs top grade, right?
Yeah.
But before the first cut, it ran all the things individually, and then once we moved to top grade more, so just was one. What was the one we just talked about?
Yafty.
Yeah. So then Yafty.
It's
is,
the first run
yeah,
prompt.
yeah. This is it's one of those like, so we have a value that's like we don't like to make a thing, but when we do, we're mad about it. Is there's no way to install flat packs like declaratively on systems, like
Yeah.
especially us and image base. We still can't do it. We do it in the ISO step, you
Yeah.
know, because there's no way. There's a bug upstream in Flatpak where Owen is like, if I just made you a /etc/ pre-install.d and you dropped a list in there, would that work? And a bunch of us were like, yes, let's have this. So we had to make a tool to basically shell out and Flatpak install stuff. And the first cut was actually the Zenity first run from OpenSUSE Micro OS, Richard Brown's thing. So I copied that because that was basically what he was doing. And then that was that. And then my friend Marco Ceppi, who's a server Python guy, not a desktop guy, I was like, look, man, I need you a tool that click next, install some Flatpaks, maybe run a UJust rule, and then that's it.
And Zenity is, I feel like, hasn't gotten a lot of updates since for a while.
Yeah, so it's
now.
not Zenity now. It's like just PyGTK or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it was only supposed to be temporary, and it's like 3 years later. And it is useful for folks, especially in Bazzite. I dropped Yafty and Bluefin like a long time ago. It just felt cleaner, after fresh install, fresh reboot. Just give me my desktop. I ain't got time. So, people have you ever
typing
watched
out
someone
all
reinstall
those
Windows 11?
Typing out all those FlatHub IDs of all the stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and like
yeah, I've had
Windows
to.
11's like,
are you kidding? I'm the one who has to
next,
install Windows 11
next,
for people.
Next, skip, next. I was just like,
and then you wait 30 minutes in between each next, as like, yeah.
Oh man, no thanks. That's why.
But the same thing is true of Apple. When you hit next on all of those buttons, you're waiting another half an hour you wait for half an hour once it's reset, and then after you get past like the iCloud stuff, then they like, we wait 30 more minutes.
Yeah, here's a cool uBlue feature that not a lot of OSs have. We stage our updates, so at no time is there ever a rotating thing on boot or on shutdown. It stages in the background for you. So Android doesn't have that. Windows doesn't have that. uBlue systems in my house are the only ones where I never have to sit there and watch a spinning thing.
Yeah.
It just,
and then, where people will still get updates, but they can still reboot when they want.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I do. I just tell people don't overthink it. Just shut your computer off and you're not using it. It's fine. On Bluefin, our builds are weekly by default anyway. Your machine will check every day, but we only publish weekly. So if there's anything bad, push out a new image to you right away. That's how we release. But yeah, I just kind of tell people, usually again, when people are like, I hate that I have to reboot after installing software, right? It's like, well, you're holding it wrong.
Right. I
Yeah.
think that's a thing too, because I have to ask myself, what are you why are you installing something so much
Yeah.
if you have to reboot that frequently? And if then maybe you should
Yeah.
use a distro box or something.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly. It's like maybe you don't need to put stuff on the host.
But
I
like,
do say, like, if you are using that stuff, I call that day 0, which is like your installation day or day 1. It's like, yep, you're going to reboot a few times then because you're setting up your computer. And then after that, put it in cruise control.
right.
Yeah.
Like one of the things when I was using it, Bluefin, for the first couple months, was it gave me a lot of, especially even though most of like 95% of what I use is in FlatHub.
Mhm.
Like it gave me pause and made me realize, oh shoot, so much of this is not like maintained by the actual people. Like a lot of it. Like of
It is, but
everything.
neither are your distro packages.
I know, and that was also the conclusion that I came to, which was, hang on, that also means the distro packages aren't either, and then that led
Yeah.
to a whole nother thing of,
Yeah. And then someone's always like, well, I could trust my distro because they vet every single one of those packages. I was like, you've clearly not worked at a distro before.
they don't have time to do that. They don't have time to do it. They don't have people to do it, and
Yeah.
and automation can only catch so much of it.
Plus, I think people forget that these are just Git remotes, right?
Right.
When someone's like, well, the Upstream or the app or this, it's like, we're all kind of just like the same people in the same room, It's so, but however, getting third-party people to take over the Flatpaks it is important, right? Like
Yeah.
we want Discord.
I witnessed
invested
on
in their
GitHub of the journey of the Inkscape Flatpak being taken over, trying to get themselves taken over by Upstream Inkscape.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, they never had the verified checkmark on FlatHub, purely because the rule of FlatHub's verification system is there must be an official developer who looks after the thing, even though the Inkscape developers clearly build stuff around the Flatpak existing because they answer to issues for it, they help people fix problems, and so they had to like get in a fight with FlatHub and Inkscape's developers. So there's like this three-way thing of, oh, we need to publish like our Inkscape to FlatHub and get the verified checkmark.
Yeah.
And they, for a couple months ago, they did, and that didn't used to be the case because of it was just the process.
Yeah, there's a bunch of old patches around. I want to say Gallia patches or something for fixing the sandbox stuff between Chrome browsers and Flatpak, or at least a good start to it.
Oh, funny you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I actually bookmarked that blog post that you were the forum thread that you responded to about this in particular.
Oh yeah,
and the headache of trying to get Chrome to.
Yeah, like I get it. It's a technical problem, but like you don't want to lose the forest for the trees. You know what I mean? Yeah. First of all, I use Firefox anyway, but
I use Brave in a distro box. I'm not keen
on giving Google root on my computer either.
I use Brave in a distro box.
Yeah.
So that's how I get around it.
Yeah.
The only thing, again, more niche issue is PWA's shortcuts don't work.
Oh my God. PWAs in general. It's like really weird. You have an open Linux desktop and then you have an open web.
Right.
And we can't figure it out. It's infuriating to me. But the Chromium thing is important. Like that is something that, and I did talk to a few people, I think at the time, on the Edge team, and everyone's like, sounds like a great idea. I ain't got no time. We ain't got no time to do it.
Brave and Vivaldi have gone through the same struggle trying to get
the
Upstream.
same thing.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's hopefully something that, like, I don't know, maybe someday someone will fix. But the best you can do is keep trying, right? Like, I'm not going to sit around and wait for browsers to be fixed. on a broken Linux
No
computer.
one's gonna
I'm just
wait
gonna.
for Microsoft Edge to continue to be packaged as a dev in RPM.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good. Well, I'm pretty happy with Firefox. So, and they give me an official flat pack.
I
So if it's that
have
important to you,
I am the only probably the only person on the planet who has like more than 6 Firefox user profiles.
wow.
But I actually know how to do it. Like most people, they don't tell people about this at all. There's no documentation or anything. If you just do the Flatpak launch Firefox, or even just if you the distro package, just do Firefox, do
Okay.
-p. That will open a profile menu, and you can
Oh,
create
that's
a
right.
profile just like you do in Chrome. It's it's such an underrated feature, but I wish
Yeah.
more people knew about it because people are like, well, I have this account, but I don't want it to touch this account. So I download this other browser. No, 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 no. Hang
Yeah.
on. You can just create another profile. Like at work today, someone was like, oh, I need to log into like this Amazon account for this thing. But then we have like this other Amazon account for this thing. So it's like, hang on a second, because they have like, because there's like a purchasing account and a normal account. It's like, hang on a second.
Yeah.
If you create a Chrome profile, you can just log in with the 2 Amazon accounts and they can both stay logged in and it just works. You don't
Hmm.
have to constantly sign out and sign back in again to your Amazon account, right?
I keep telling myself I'm gonna move more to that. What are those Firefox containers? Whatever.
Oh, no, those are for like that's more for like separating stuff in within one profile.
Yeah, that's what I need that a lot inside my stuff. I have a work profile and a personal
Well, with
profile.
that you should use a separate profile as a whole, not containers, because containers is more like you have an Instagram account and then you have the Instagram account you stalk everybody with. That's the that's the example that I
Okay.
use, right? It's more for
Okay.
like you use profiles to separate the bigger parts of your life, like your banking, your work, like
Yeah. That should be the title of this YouTube video. You explain containers to me, but no one's gonna. You have to
I
watch the whole
explain
video.
containers to the container guy.
Yeah, exactly. That they have to watch the whole video. Got to get those metrics up.
Yeah. That's been on my list to do for a long time. Yeah, there's a whole thing too. There's one of the who Thorn Oaken Pants of Arkin Fox has a long page about this on the Arkin Fox GitHub page, and he says it's because when Firefox created containers back in 2016, 2017,
Uh-huh.
it is not the same thing when they first started to implement total cookie protection, because when they first made containers, they intended it to be a like a privacy measure, right? But then they introduced total cookie protection, which completely separates all cookies on a per site basis. So I think there are still some things that are unpartitioned, but I think the Fission sandboxing
Mm.
changes some stuff around that. But that's why you don't need to use containers for that level of privacy, because all of those things are now defaults in Firefox, right? The containers are just helpful if you need to log into like, I don't know, like your school Google account and your like home Google account, right?
Yeah. Wow. User J. This Archifox has 10,000.
It's more security hardening related, but I will say that some of the defaults are horrible. Like they like disable the search bar in like the user.js, and you have to write an override to turn the search bar back on.
Remove
Like,
all network functionality for security reasons.
yeah. So they're like the excuse they give is, but you can add the old school search bar from like Firefox 2.0 back into the UI, but it's like I just want to use a search bar like a normal
You're like,
person.
I'm good, thanks. How many other projects are here on GitHub that I could just surf to instead? Let me move on. That's right. It's like that sounds pretty cool for someone who isn't me. All right.
Yeah, I have like, and then I have like one shell script which just runs the updater shell script in each
Uh-huh.
profile, just so I
Oh,
can keep things clean.
this thing reminded me, the user JS thing. Have you used add water for Firefox? Oh, you don't use
I
Firefox.
do.
Oh, okay.
I daily drive Firefox,
Oh,
so
okay. So add water. It's a flat pack. Install that, and it automatically downloads and gives you GUI config options for the GTK theme for Firefox, and it looks so good.
all right, I'm
Yeah.
looking. I have
Add
desktop
water.
right now.
Yeah.
What's it called? Add
Add water, like you're adding water.
Add water. Keep Firefox with fashion.
Yeah.
Oh.
It has an apply button, so don't forget to click it at the bottom. That's
Yeah.
it's kind of annoying, but whatever.
If
I'm
only
sure there's a
GNOME
reason.
software would let you zoom in on the pictures, though.
Speaking of, have you used Warehouse 2.0?
I have not.
Okay, so in there, there's a pane where you can install Flatpaks from it. However, it's like a normal GTK app, so it's not like a store with thumbnails, but like the search is pretty good.
Trying
It's
it
like
right.
fast. You could search for a thing, select a bunch of Flatpaks. You hit a button.
It's
And
just
it
no
solves
result
all-
found. Why don't we look at something a little more generic? Inkscape. We were just talking about Inkscape. Hey, there it is. But I already have it installed. What's something I don't have?
Add water.
I looked up add water. I got nothing.
Oh, maybe the search needs work.
I wonder if it's a space. I wonder, maybe it's because I put a space in it.
Or just do water. Or maybe Firefox.
Oh. Oh, and then there's like a little thing, and then there's a little thing where you just click install, and it does it. Oh, how nice.
Yeah. So I'm add a thumbnail view to this, and then I'll replace GNOME software. That's what I'm thinking. Because it's got all the other management stuff in there too. It's pretty good.
Well, speaking of GNOME software,
yeah.
I wanted to ask you about what is
yeah,
it?
we should
System D package kit D.
Package kit D. We don't have that.
Not yet. Fedora might add it later, but it's in early days right now. But eventually they want to add support to System D package kit D, so that you can do Silverblue updates through System D, because it will support all the atomic Fedoras and stuff like GNOME OS too.
Oh, you mean yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. I was just chatting with Adrian on Mastodon. Because did you see his thing on GNOME OS? Actually, can we talk about
Adrian Volk? Yeah, Volk. Yeah, I actually boosted his post about.
Yeah. So I read it and I was like, oh, it'd be so free, right? Because like he was kind of talking about our systems, right? Like the OS tree ones.
Yeah.
His thing used to be OS tree way back in the day. And he was like, what I hate about this is that layering allows people to bring their bad habits with them, right? So all the stuff that I'm talking about that I was complaining about before, like he wants a hard cutoff. I more want to shame you into changing, right? Than, not giving you an option, right? Like if you layer your VPN RPM and you add the repo, it's really not that bad, right? Like it's updating in the background.
And if I had to emergency rebase because something broke, it's only one package. Like,
yeah, exactly. And you can always rebase and you can always reset back and get rid of the layered stuff. So worst case, you bring a little bit of the jank from traditional desktops into the new world. But if you need it for your VPN provider, that's fine, But I'm always like, nope, no layering, no everything. You should be able to do.
I even installed Veracrypt.
Does that work?
It does. Through their weird tar gzip zip folder. It works.
Oh my god. Sounds like not fun to me.
Or the RPM. But both of them work. Yeah, it works. And DaVinci Resolve somehow figured out the folder structure, even though it's slightly different.
Oh, no way. That works.
Yeah.
Because
you think it wouldn't, because of /var/ is in front of everything. And it did trip it up when I first imported my transitions in my stock media, but aside from that hiccup, it's smooth sailing and it's mostly the same.
Interesting. Yeah, but Adrian's like, GNOME OS, we're not going to make any compromises. It's like you only get
but they know what they are, though. Like, you're not meant. I know they say you're not supposed to, but he does want to get it into a place where it does become that.
I'm talking about his vision, not.
Yeah. His vision is he wants it to be.
Yeah, and I was like, preach, brother, because every time we make a compromise in uBlue, I get so mad, because it's like your thing, and you're like, I don't want to deviate or whatever. But then it's like, there's the flexibility, I think, is one of the reasons people like Bazzite, despite, Linux users telling you they're inflexible and you can't customize it. Right. For everybody else, right? They're like, it's very flexible. They can do a lot what they want, right? relatively safely,
Yeah.
right? Because you can still jack up your home directory. You can always mess up you can still mess
He
up all
got
sorts of
secure
Unix
boot
stuff.
in NVIDIA before Silverblue did.
Yeah, yeah. That's just we attracted a person that just figured it out, you know.
I mean, the
So
wiki does write down instruction. The wiki, Fedora, not Fedora's wiki. The RPM Fusion wiki has a write up about it, which is where it comes from.
oh, interesting.
But with you
We
guys,
probably
you
just
have
copied that.
yeah. That's all you have to do. It's super
Yeah,
simple.
yeah.
Like, and the only thing that you guys probably have to do is set the default MLK util password, which is the
Is Universal Blue.
right
It used to be uBlue
uBlue
dash OS,
dash OS.
but
Yep.
we didn't have anybody on the team that was using one of those international keyboards. So later on, someone was like, "Hey,
You can't type a dash.
yeah, this is the
Yeah.
absolute worst character you could have picked." I was like, "Oh no." I don't know. Oh,
Mm,
so we updated that, and we're
yeah.
constantly striving to rotate our keys and stuff like that. But
Yeah, because
um,
remember you had to rotate it once so far, right?
yeah, I think we're gonna announce another rotation here pretty soon. I messed up a pretty big key rotation, so the experts make us practice that now as part of our little um
Mm.
schedule thing. But yeah, and it's one of those things where you add the new key and you leave it in there for a year,
It's really
and then
just so
you
you can
remove the old key.
sign. Yeah, you just have to
Yeah,
sign NVIDIA. That's really it. Everything else is just fine. It's just because NVIDIA is NVIDIA. Needs
yeah,
to have that deep kernel access, and it's not like people who are like, oh, I want to install VirtualBox or I want to install um like AMD. It's like, oh, but it just works, right?
yeah. I have all
Like
AMD kit. I've got one 2080. I've got in a box somewhere. Um, yeah. Every time I read about those poor NVIDIA users.
I am one
Um,
of those poor NVIDIA
yeah.
users. I have a 4060,
Oh wow.
so
Yeah.
I have
Not me.
a
I've
I
got a
have a
7900.
System 76 laptop. I regret it, I half regret it. I think it's good
Mm,
hardware. I just think they make a lot of questionable firmware decisions
mm.
because
Oh,
they try to like remove like the Intel management engine, but it breaks a lot of security features that exist in other like other stuff. And I'm like,
uh,
guys, it would save you a ton of
it's
time if
so
you just
Linux.
didn't do that.
Just
Like
leave it.
you could spend more time. Think of how much you could spend on the Cosmic desktop than you could like trying to like do all of this with firmware. I'm
Oh,
serious. It's
I'm on my Felio right now. It's been a
yeah.
pretty good
Oh,
box.
you're on a Thelio, but it's the same
Yeah.
deal with Thelio. They don't have yeah, they disable the Intel management engine. There's no, so that means you can't get boot card working or any of that stuff, and you can't get a secure boot and TPM are disabled out of the box.
What do I have in here? Type of.
And
Yeah,
then there is
I
a
love our
quirk.
fast
There's a
fetch.
quirk with uBlue where if you
Ooh, tell me.
yeah, it's not, it's minor. It's only a System 76 hardware. The System 76 package it's maintained by, I'm spacing on the name right now,
Ooh, that's
doesn't
open. We
work.
want to support that.
Oh, okay, yeah, because it's
Yeah.
purely just because of stupid semantic like
Yeah.
dependency stuff with the fsync kernel and the normal kernel.
Yeah. Oh, I've got a 5800X in here.
Okay,
I have in here. Um, that and Tuxedo Laptops has a module. We just need someone to come in and help do the AK mods. If someone can help do the AK mods, we can ship that pretty easily.
yeah,
Because the nice thing about the AK mods repo is anybody can use it. And
right,
we have a kernel cache repo as well that keeps all the kernels in Fedora and the fsync kernel and stuff. So if you have a custom image and you want fsync on it, or you want uh, the Fedora kernel but on a slower cadence, CoreOS, that's how we do Bluefin and Aurora.
yeah.
You can snag those. Um, at some point, I was like, we should do LTS kernels. We should do this and this, but like we wouldn't use them. So
I think the rolling kernel's fine, to be honest, or even like the custom kernel on top of the rolling kernel for what you guys
yeah,
do.
that's what Bazzite does.
Yeah,
Uh, Bluefin and Aurora, we're going to keep stock,
yeah.
and we're following the CoreOS cadence release, which is
It's a little
um,
faster than the Silverblue release, correct?
no, it's slower.
But slower.
Our kernel is slower. Yeah, what you actually get is um, in Fedora CoreOS, they gate their kernels, so they only publish an image every 2 weeks.
Hmm.
So they're almost
How hard
always.
was that to implement?
I thought it would be hard to implement, but it's actually pretty easy because it's not a separate kernel. It's just an older Fedora kernel. So what we do in the build system is we use a tool called Scopio that gets the version of the kernel from the Fedora CoreOS container.
Yep.
Every container has metadata, so you can say what kernel do you have inside you,
Right.
right? So we do that, and then we pass that as an argument into our build system. And in that kernel version is the user space, which it says FC39, FC40, or
Yeah.
whatever. And then we also pass that along, and that's how we make our stable tag, which is a rolling tag of Fedora. So whenever CoreOS does an update, we get that kernel or we get that user space. So in about 2 weeks, when CoreOS turns on Fedora 41, Bluefin stable will update that day automatically. So,
Yeah.
and that's what we want. We kind of, like, we don't use the term rolling, we say continuous delivery.
Yeah.
So like for us, you should be able to just say machine, I want this.
I just want to be done with rolling release, stable release. Can we just get update and you're just on the next one? That's
Yeah. And Bluefin, I call them throttle settings. You got latest, you got GTS, which is -1, and then stable in the middle. Pick it and then leave it and then forget about it. Right. So I like that. And it was a nicer cadence than GTS, which I was trying to find what I call the Ubuntu sweet spot, which is the Ubuntu 6-month release, right? It's like, I want the latest GNOME, but I don't want to be arching every day either, you know. But
I feel like
traditional distro,
right?
It breaks because you're doing all these upgrades all the time. So what do you do for machines you care about? LTS. Now I have old software and that sucks. So I wanted to find a thing. I just wanted the best of everything. So that's what I was trying to shoot for.
Yeah. I did have a question about Homebrew. I know Homebrew is a thing here.
Everyone's favorite topic.
Everyone's favorite topic, including mine, because the first thing I did was get rid of it. But in getting rid of it, I did actually think there might be some problems I might need to report.
Okay.
So like if you try running some UJust scripts, they ask you if they look for the Homebrew stuff first. But there are some scripts that cause some, I don't want to say irreparable because they are fixable. It just took me an hour to fix them.
Oh, well, that's shitty. Follow that.
It was if you try to install, I just think Ollama, without brew, it still does a lot of the actions, but it fails to install anything because Homebrew's not around.
Yeah.
Right.
Because when you get Ollama on our systems, it's actually the Ollama container because we run it as a service on your machine.
Have you considered trying just install Alpaca instead and then have it in?
So I use Alpaca every day. And definitely there was a time I think where I was when everyone was pissed off about the Windows AI. I was like, I'm just going to ship Alpaca and piss those people off.
What are your thoughts on Windows' AI stuff?
I don't care. I don't have one. AI is going to be in everything you own.
Well, maybe
anyway,
you don't, as someone who works for the
not.
Linux Foundation, but as someone who works a normal job, as a Windows computer.
Oh,
like it's.
Well, I use Linux even when I didn't work here. I've used Linux for 30 years. So.
Yeah. But I mean, I had to use it for work. So, when I deal with other people's computers.
Dude. So first of all, if you are ever on a work Windows machine, you're miserable anyway.
Right?
Like, it's
you can tell they
drowning.
You can tell that you're drowning, and you can tell they cut a few price corners at a few places, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's like you can drown in 3 inches of water. You can also drown in 12 feet of water. So like you're already doomed. So I don't really have an opinion. I think, like you would think there's an alternative. So what's the alternative? Buy a Chromebook. That's going to have it for sure.
I just tell people,
a Mac.
I just tell people move to Linux or get a Mac. That's literally where I'm at right now.
I love Alpaca. I use it every day.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about, if we detect an MPU on the machine, install Alpaca by default. But the thing is like the whole chat interface I don't think it's really proven that it's like ready to be in a default thing. Like I use it a lot, but
Yeah.
would my mom use it? I don't know. You know,
I don't think it is, because you look at the numbers for Apple sales this year.
yeah.
They've been kind of mediocre. Hasn't bragging about Apple Intelligence has not given them a lot the money to compensate for it.
Yeah. But if there's a lot, if we detect a Copilot key and that key is going to be useless anyway,
It's
then
just
yeah,
a
I would.
well, the
I would
Copilot
like,
key is just a bind to whatever the right click
sure.
Unicode is.
But if it's an AI PC, maybe install Alpaca. I don't
Yeah.
know. Plus, you got to download the model. You have to have the right GPU. How many people even have a GPU?
A GPU that
You know?
works with it.
Yeah, and also
You need to have like NVIDIA 30 series. You need to be like NVIDIA AMD like 7,000 or what, 6,000 or 7,000.
yeah, and
Like,
even then it's like totally.
yeah.
So we'll see how MPUs go. Like it's easy for us to do that, you know. So what I really like to do, one of the reasons I love Bluefin is because I put Tailscale on, it's the VPN on the image, is I leave Ollama running on my workstation, and then when I'm on an airplane,
You just remote
I'm
in.
connect with Alpaca because it can
Yeah.
do a
You use like
thing.
Cloudflare, well, not Cloudflare Tunnel, but like you just set up your own server on your.
No, I just turn on Tailscale on my computers, and they're always on the same network.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
it's yeah. If a computer doesn't have Tailscale, it's worthless to me. So I'm always on the right network. I always get my Plex. I always get all my stuff is everywhere I need because I'm always.
I
Even when I'm
remember
on an
before
airplane.
Mulvad had their app, having to manage those stupid open VPN configs. I was like
I'm not
losing my
doing that
mind.
anymore. I'm not doing that anymore. Yeah,
Or like the WireGuard configs after that, and it's like,
yeah. I do wish the GUI and network manager to import WireGuard was better for folks.
yeah.
Because one thing we do say,
I think
with, like,
GNOME does a
Bluefin-
good job with it, and so does KDE. But it's the
Oh, okay.
actual network manager built in one
Oh, okay.
that's
I see,
problematic,
yeah.
and that's what a lot of the older desktops fall back on. So like your XFCE, your LXQT, they fall back
Ooh.
to that that configuration thing. Or even if you use like a window manager, that's what they all use, and like by default anyway, at least in my
Yeah.
memory.
Yeah, so by default, I don't think so. You know,
Yeah.
I'll use it. It's nice because I'm on a framework.
My interpretation of it
theme.
was it's probably not privacy invasive. It could be, but it probably isn't. But if anything, it's more just an annoyance because people are going to have what did I calculate? Around 50 gigabytes of their hard drive taken up.
Oh yeah,
My
I mean, a
math
good
was
model.
correct. No, it's
good
not the
model.
model. It's
What?
it's snapshot storage. It's 25 gigabytes of snapshot storage. Then you have to
good.
add the 27 gigabytes plus 8 of Windows on top of it. So that means about 58, 60 gigabytes of your computer is eaten up out of the box. But
Yeah.
it's designed to be, according to Microsoft, 1/5 of your storage. So if you do the math, 1 terabyte means you have 125 gigabytes.
See, and everyone calls
Just
you
snapshots.
Blue. See, look, you're getting a great deal. Getting a great. Yeah.
I mean, you can turn it off. Like,
Yeah.
that's what people are like, but what if I just read only the folder, take ownership of the folder? It's like, just
Yeah, that's what I
don't.
don't get. People are like, Linux is so complicated. I was like, there is nothing more complicated than being a Windows expert. Oh my God.
Have you ever tried to explain to somebody the difference between
Oh.
UWP apps and the normal ones?
Oh man. People up in there doing God.
Or like, but how do you update how do you
GPOs.
update your programs? Oh, you do it through the Microsoft Store. What?
Yeah.
But then if you go through the Microsoft Store, it doesn't even update everything.
The last time I checked, Chocolatey was pretty. Was Chocolatey or Winget one of those? I don't
WinGet
know.
is the Microsoft Store. For all intents and
Yeah.
purposes, is the Microsoft Store.
Oh, is that any good?
It's same problem, right? It doesn't update everything,
Oh.
right? Because if you install just literally anything, like you install like a browser, it doesn't
Yeah.
auto update through WinGet. You have to,
Oh, that's BS.
right? It's the cell. And when you install it through WinGet, you still need to click through all the buttons of the installer when you do
that
it.
sucks.
So, but if you install 20 things, you have to wait for those all 20 installer wizards to pop up and click through all of the buttons.
That sounds awful. No, the way to do Windows. So I have one Windows drive on my machine. I have an external
Yeah.
3.5. USB-C, and I use Rufus to install Windows to Go mode Windows 11 on it.
Is that still supported on Windows 11?
Yes, but only through Rufus. Right? They kind of hid it
Oh
in like
yeah,
Windows
because
11.
so they're just using a bypass. Rufus is
Yeah,
using a bypass.
yeah, but it works awesome, right? And I have that, and there's like Destiny is on there. When I play Destiny, I boot into that because our systems don't support dual booting off of
Right.
like multiple, which
Well,
you
you
should
can't.
be doing it.
Well, you
Yeah,
should
but
probably not be doing that anyway.
yeah, yeah, don't do that. I don't care what your use case is. Unless you can't afford hardware, then that's fine. But like,
Really, it's for people with expansion, right? They don't have the ability to expand.
yeah, and also don't let operating systems try to manage themselves. That's just awful, you know.
Yeah.
So what I recommend is have an external drive or whatever, and then I boot into the BIOS. That was one of the first UJust commands. UJust BIOS sends you to the BIOS. It's just running that systemd command to send you
Yeah, and
to the
like
BIOS.
normal Ubuntu or Fedora, or even Arch, you can
Yeah,
update grub to auto find your Windows bootloader.
yeah, but we don't want to do any of that.
No, you can. No, it doesn't actually change anything. It just adds an
Oh, okay.
entry. It just adds
Oh,
an entry for you to just boot, so it saves you the time of having to go into your BIOS, press another key to like look for the menu that does one-time boot, and then
oh,
another key to boot into your thing. Instead, what
I'm
it does
still
is
not doing it.
it just does it. But that's what I
Yeah,
used to do.
yeah.
I didn't
So
install the
I've
other
got.
NVMe on my laptop, so
Oh, okay. So you got
yeah,
a
I haven't done it
blank.
yet.
Ooh, all right.
And plus, I can't do it anyway because Silverblue doesn't let you do that.
Yeah,
So
good. See, saving the day every day. So I boot into that to play Destiny every
yeah,
once in a while.
yeah. I had
Um,
to explain to someone if you want to play League of Legends, you can't use your if you wanted to use Linux really badly, and I'm like, well, if you want, you play League of Legends. If you want to play League of Legends, you can't be in like
yeah,
your Linux system to do that because they don't let you, right? You
yeah,
have to use your Fedora system. You can't use.
yeah. The gaming's pretty good though. The
Yeah, aside from
gaming's
that, gaming's great.
yeah.
There's a lot of ridiculous things, even games that sometimes work better, and at least in my experience. Like I tried to run L.A. Noir way back
Uh-huh.
when, Rocksteady L.A. Rockstar L.A.
Yeah,
Noir,
yeah.
and apparently it relies on a Microsoft executable, which doesn't exist on the Microsoft website anymore. But you know who
Nice.
has a copy of it? Wine.
Proton?
Wine.
Oh.
So you have to
Oh,
go to
nice.
Wine's link, and they have an archive copy, and then you gotta go into the Proton prefix and install it.
No
And then
way.
then everything works okay.
Oh,
But
that's interesting.
on Windows, people just report issues all the time. Oh, I can't get it to work. Like
Yeah.
same thing with Fallout 3, right? With Fallout 3, you have to set it in compatibility mode for like Windows 7 or something in
Oh,
order to get
okay.
it to run because the executable's not 4 GB address aware.
Oh my
But if you
goodness.
because that's how Bethesda games were back then. But if you same thing with New Vegas, right? But if you have the GOG version, it's already four
Yeah.
gigabyte address aware.
Hmm.
So because they
You
patch it for Bethesda.
you should interview Kyle next because he nerds out about this stuff for
I used
hours
to
and
mod for
hours.
Bethesda games.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's
He
the
he
only reason
modded
I know this.
Half-Life games.
I released
Uh,
one mod, which was enough to give me Nexus Premium
oh, nice.
for the
Kyle worked
download and
on
stuff.
that astute observers will note that we feature Titanfall 2 on the Bazzite
Does he have a
website.
server for that? Were
No,
they
he
able to
he
get
used to
servers for
work on
that?
what's it, North Star or something like that.
Oh,
Kyle, that's where
not
Kyle
familiar with it.
started.
I only played the first Titanfall, so
Oh, the second Titanfall is awesome, man.
yeah.
The single player campaign, I love it.
I think I still have the
Yeah.
box of the first Titanfall floating around somewhere.
Mm,
Back when you could buy it out of box.
yeah, I got
And really what it is just a glorified key to Origin. Like it's not.
I have the Quake 3 metal box.
Oh really?
Yeah, from Loki Entertainment. Actually, hold on, give me 5 seconds. Here's how old I feel. This is the metal
Oh my
tin box
gosh.
from Loki.
For Quake Arena.
They were a shop that ported games to Linux.
Wow.
And this is the special metal that I bought this at a store called Babbage's from back in the day.
Kind of like Feral Interactive does now.
Yeah. And like it's like getting warped and stuff, but here's the CD. I lost a CD long ago. But
Wow.
yeah, I've bought every Linux game. Like when Steam
The
Machines came
native
out.
release.
Yeah, I always bought the native release because I bought a Steam machine.
I got The Witcher 2.
Yeah, I remember that.
But that was a whole controversy when they were trying to
Yep.
port their stuff, and yep. That was when I was first trying out Linux back in like 2013 or whatever.
Yeah, I'm like, shut up and buy it. That's what I told people. Like people complaining that it wasn't a real port or whatever. It's
Yeah,
like,
because it was like, oh, it's just a
shut up and
VM
buy
that
it.
runs Windows or whatever. It's like,
yeah, I bought this. I remember.
yeah, it's sad because I think the Windows run in Proton still runs better.
Yeah. What are the native games that came out like later on?
BioShock Infinite.
Yep. Borderlands 2.
Yep.
Borderlands, the pre-sequel came first. And
The Grim
2.
Fandango when it had a native release.
Yeah, what else had a native release? I'm trying to think. Civilization, right? Was it Civilization?
Yes, Civilization 4. Had a
Yeah,
Linux
because
release.
you wanted to play that on your screen with the Steam, controller. I remember that thing. I remember when Proton first came out, and in Witcher 3,
Witcher 3, Doom, and Doom was unofficial. It was Witcher 3, Nier Automata, and
but like the harpies in Skellige, Witcher 3,
yeah,
on them, like their wings didn't show up.
it was just black squares.
Yeah, and I remember loading up a save on like I built my own home theater and just like getting on my horse and going to the one spot where you knew there were harpies,
Yeah,
and it's like running on Linux because I had a Steam machine. I had the Alienware. I had an Alienware Alpha, which is the Windows version.
Yeah,
and then I had the Linux version, and yeah, I just remember. Unfortunately, like when people talk about the failure of Steam machines, people forget that Steam machines didn't launch. Proton didn't exist.
Right.
Like, whereas now you hear YouTubers all the time. They're like, "Man, if you had a Steam machine with Bazzite on it," I was like, "Yeah, I've had that for years." It's good. You put AMD hardware on a TV, hook it up.
Yeah.
Bummer about the HDMI 2.1, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
So
I just need to get. I don't have time to play games anymore, man. You know this as a parent. Like you don't have time to play games as like you get to this age.
Yeah, I've got I mostly actually game more when I travel on my Steam Deck because I'm on the airplane. That's that's like the airplane thing. So that thing is pretty much like my home away from home or whatever. And then we in uBlue we play a lot of Halo because it's free. You can, kind of shoot each other and stuff.
Oh yeah, because they support they've actually support Easy Anti-Cheat now.
Yeah, oh yeah, it totally works. You can custom game modes.
The only thing I will strangle them over is having a Microsoft account requirement because that sucks.
I'm playing Halo on Linux for the memes,
Yeah.
So it's good. In the early days,
I had to help someone set up the Halo Master Chief Collection way back when. So on Linux, and that was when I mean, I don't know. Do you still have to deal with the shader compiling when you launch the Master Chief Collection?
But you could skip it because of that AMD GPL thing.
Huh?
Like it'll still sit there and do it. It'll fossilize or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you skip it, the compiler, there's a flag or whatever they passed that your GPU will probably just compile it on the fly really fast anyway, so you don't notice.
Yeah, I do that sometimes, like when I have
My kid loves to skip it.
Yeah.
It's like, skip, Dad, skip. It's like, no, we must optimize for performance. Yeah.
Yeah, look at what happened to Elden Ring. They didn't do it, and then it doesn't work.
Yeah, we play like a lot of couch co-op. Split screen Rocket League, even though Epic bailed on us.
I mean, Epic bailed on the game in general, which is a whole thing.
That's sad. A lot of it's like Mario Kart, but it's the Sonic one, the latest version of that one we play.
Yeah, I don't know Sonic at all.
Oh, we play basketball. Like I try to play with my kid. We have the 8-bit Do controllers, the 2.4 gigahertz ones. Those are nice, and I have those on my Bazzite Steam machine. I actually run a stock Steam Deck because I don't care.
Yeah,
but Bazzite's like my HTPC, and that's where I like to run. And I got a 6800 XT in there.
Which probably running software I'm not allowed to talk about on YouTube without getting a strike.
Linux?
Uh-huh. There's if you mention one of the HTTP, the home theater PC programs, YouTube will give you a strike.
Oh no.
So that's just so you know.
It's just a big Steam Deck.
Yeah.
But it runs at 4K. It's pretty nice.
Okay, is it like
So
one of the mini PCs with?
no, it's just a home built. I
Okay,
put a 6800
yeah,
XT in a mini ITX case back when PCs were more affordable.
yeah.
And then you just install Linux. And before that, I was running Chimera OS / Gamer OS. So I've been rocking the big picture mode thing on my
For a long
TVs and
time now,
stuff
then,
for
because if you were around for Chimera
years.
OS and
Yeah.
Steam OS,
Yeah. I remember when he started that, Alcazar. Yeah. He was the only person flying the flag for Steam machines for a while. Because I always loved the idea, right? Like,
yeah,
um, so, and now it's actually become a reality. It's like pretty, you got to admit, it's pretty cool, you know?
that's why the Raspberry Pi building community is so big.
I know. It's like amazing. So I love all that maker stuff.
Yeah. Well,
Got any other Bluefin questions? So what are you gonna edit
I
this
usually
into
edit
a
it down.
okay, good.
I might not edit it a whole lot,
Because
but
I know I tend to ramble a lot,
no,
you know.
rambling is fine. It's more
Yeah.
content. If you upload something more than an hour, people are like, "Oh, you must have
Yeah.
put effort
Listen,
into it."
when it comes to destroying the existing Linux distribution model, I get very passionate.
Yeah.
It's like burn it all
It
down.
wasn't until I use Bluefin, if I'm being honest, that I have
Mhm.
never thought about anything on my computer for a long time, and it feels great.
Yeah. So liberating.
Yeah, I don't want to have to think about any of this
Yeah.
stuff anymore.
The best part is like once you get that part of Linux out of your life, you can concentrate on actually learning real Linux.
Yeah,
You know, and that's like the step that I want people to take, right? It's
right.
get a little bit more you know, it's there's way more to life than package managers. So
Yeah. Um,
oh, you did want to ask me about homebrew.
Homebrew?
We never finished the homebrew
No,
conversation.
no,
Let's wrap it up.
we
Yeah.
basically did. It's
Oh,
yeah,
okay. You
it's
just
yeah.
don't like it. All right.
I just don't like it. I mean, if I was on Mac, I'd totally different story. I would say it's a necessity on Mac. Like,
Huh.
there's a lot of stuff on Mac that's just like missing, and it just feels bad, and like
Yeah.
not everything's in the App Store, and then there's like, yeah,
Yeah. Because I'll just tell you the reason we include it is because a lot of my target audience comes from Macs.
yeah,
So for them, that's a valuable thing. Plus, also, distributions are always incentivized to have you use their packages, right?
right,
So we're not a distribution, so I don't care, right?
yeah,
So for us, knowing that Homebrew, like no other distro is going to ship Homebrew, because why would they? They have their package manager, right? So for us, I get an entire ecosystem of stuff out of the box, which
yeah.
is what I'm shooting for. Knowing that you can get your traditional package manager in a distro box if you want it to. So
Right.
if you want to use,
I just feel like that's a cleaner thing because ever since the Ollama problems, that's what I've resorted to.
yeah,
It's certainly not as clean because I do have to launch the service like, from the command line like
yeah,
whatever, but it's for Ollama that's simple. It's just an Ollama serve and then you just
yeah.
run Ollama run whatever model you want.
We could also probably just polish that up a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not happy with a lot of the Ollama stuff we have. It's not built in enough yet for me.
I think you should just bite the bullet, move to Alpaca. It's I know
Yeah,
people like the command line one, but I think Alpaca might be the way to go, especially because there's already GUIs for stuff like Warehouse and Box
yeah,
Buddy,
yeah. Maybe we should
right?
just
It's
tell
in
them
the
to do Alpaca.
same respect, right?
Yeah. All right. When I do the pull request, I'll credit you with your GitHub contribution.
I'll
I
give
don't
you
know.
the
We'll see though.
I'll give you the
See,
+1.
see if I had Yafty, I would be like, then I would just have a section in Yafty called AI tools, and you can pick and choose.
Yeah.
Right? We need
Not
someone
sure
to
of what
maintain.
other. I mean, I know there's stuff like Imaginer and like Bavadere, but it's not
Yeah.
the.
Well, there's going to be like Podman desktop plugins and stuff. It's still early days also, right? Like
Yeah.
there's going to be stuff to put in, and there's all the cool command line ones anyway, like the ones that help you do shell completion and
Right.
you
Like
know, the
Starship,
ones that,
right? You're talking about Starship, right?
no, I'm talking about AI tools that
Oh,
that could integrate into your command line stuff.
like
We have one called mods. If you have a Unix command, you pipe it to mods, it'll explain to you what the command does. Stuff
oh,
like that. Yeah.
but with like an LLM.
Yeah. Your local LLM that you have through
Oh,
Ollama. So on my machine, I have Ollama running, and then VS Code is connected to it. My terminal's connected to it.
yeah.
And then my Alpaca is connected to it. So when I want to chat, or I'm always lost in the command line these days. I'm so old.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh
Oh,
man.
I
what's
tried
the...
using Cockpit and I couldn't get it to work, but I
Huh.
think it's just I must have done
Which,
something, to be honest. It's very late in the game for me to be installing
yeah,
Cockpit.
yeah,
Because I couldn't get the server to launch. I'm like, huh?
huh.
So but I've still used Vert Manager anyway, so it's not that big of a deal.
Oh,
I know
I have to use
that
that
heavy
thing.
sigh tells me enough that
I have
you
to
know.
use that thing. I get it. I get it.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
there's stuff like adding like PCIO stuff or whatever.
yeah.
Because you can't do that in Cockpit right now.
There was a program because we looked into this because I was like, I will literally ship anything else. And someone had created the UI for VirtualBox, but swapped out the backend for KVM, so you just needed to run it on a
Oh,
normal Linux and it would be perfect.
okay.
Um, but it kind of like got half abandoned a few months later, and I was like, because I
That's
kind of
such a good
want a
idea,
better
though.
GUI. Oh, I know, it'd be so brilliant. I hope someone does that.
If only we could just recruit the people who do boxes and the people who do Vert Manager
Yeah,
and just say, hey, what if
just
you
give me the
make it
one
look
thing.
like VMware Workstation? Just make it a carbon copy of VMware Workstation or VirtualBox, and
Just do that and call it a day.
right.
Yeah. So,
But I
hmm,
think that's easier said than, especially when interacting with KVM, right? Easier said than done, right?
I don't know. There's probably a reason no one's done it yet. I would suspect it's not
Yeah,
as easy as we make it sound. Yeah. All right. So, did we cover everything?
yeah. I
Any
think
other
that's
questions?
yeah. Really, the other thing is, the sense that I get, okay, if
Uh-huh.
Bluefins to get more traction is, it's to keep pushing upstream to get more engagement from the people upstream, because it's stuff like
Oh, I think we have it. Yeah.
yeah, no, you definitely have it, right? It's just
Oh,
the
I hope so
continued
because we conspired with them.
right. It's the you got Petixis into mainline
Texas.
Fedora,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, that was Christian Herger. He kind of showed up out of nowhere on that one
Yeah.
because I had a spec because I was trying to convince Cassidy James Blade to design a terminal for me. I called it Project EXO. I was
Yeah.
like, we're missing this. And I
I
wrote it.
think Elementary drained Cassidy a lot for this sort of thing.
Yeah. And I was like, dude, you design it and
But
then we'll just
he's a
get someone
great
to do it.
designer. Like,
Yeah. But but I never convinced anybody. I think I approached the bottles folks. There was a few people I approached. I was like, please just make this terminal for me. Um, but no one was doing it. And it ends up Christian had actually come up to this conclusion on his own.
yeah.
And then one day I woke up and Prompt came out. It was called Prompt back then.
Yep.
I was like, oh, first of all, it's great because it was designed exactly how you wanted it to be. And it means that someone else had arrived to the same conclusion that you have.
And it
And when
had
that
the same
happens in
features.
software, yeah, just like when I saw Cam Van Dyne's Ubuntu core, right? It's like we have arrived at the same conclusion. We have arrived at the same, everyone's arriving at the same conclusion,
Right.
right? I'm ready to go all in. Now you know that that validates the idea. Yeah. So Texas is there. I think I think we're kind of showing that the model works for Fedora. There's certainly people in Fedora who are like, yes, good, maybe this will move. There's certain people who are scared, right?
Right.
Um, but I think at the end of the day, if you look at our count me metrics, because we're going to start publishing those more,
Yeah.
is if you look at the growth of Bazzite, Bluefin, and all that stuff, um, Aurora and or Silverblue and Kinoite are still growing. So we're not taking users away. We're adding all these Bazzite. They're all Bazzite users. Bazzite is about 10 times the size of all the others, right? So by now, Bazzite has more count me stats than Silverblue and Kinoite combined almost,
Yeah.
right? And it just shows that people want
Even
working
Bluefin
computers.
and Aurora probably have a lot lot.
No, actually, we only
They
have
don't?
2,000. Yeah, I mean, we're still relatively new. I mean, I think a lot of um, I think it shows how important growth is on Linux when it's going to a place where it's perfect for, where there is no incumbent, right? Like Windows already sucks on handheld. There's no, it doesn't have a monopoly on that yet. The best one
Right.
in that industry is Linux, and people just want to use that on different hardware. Whereas Windows is so entrenched, there is no chance, right? You have to. That's how Chromebooks got popular, right? And went a place where Windows couldn't go,
Right.
right? And by the time they tried Windows S, Chromebooks had already taken over that market, you know.
Right. Really
So
Chromebooks and iPads.
yeah, so any place where Linux can go where there is no incumbent always leads to hyper growth. I mean, this is just a pattern that we've observed in the industry, right? So Bazzite blowing up but not taking away users from Fedora is fine. So I don't think we've ever competed with Fedora, right? Like Silverblue main, the image you're using, that's going to be a very small amount of people, you know,
Yeah.
so relative to the people who just want Bazzite or Aurora. So, I think we're kind of taking places where Fedora can't go, right? But we were only able to do it through this new tech. And I think when I talked to the Fedora project leader, Matthew, I was
Yeah,
like, in
Matthew
a lot of
Miller.
ways, yeah, we're like Voyager, right? Where we're out in the middle of the Gamma Quadrant trying to figure out what's going on, and then we're going to report back to the Federation what we found,
Right.
and we found the Borg, and we're the Borg. So it's like assimilate everything. So that's kind of the vibe. So I'm very excited that Fedora people are into it. Red Hat people are obviously into it because they're
Yeah.
productizing it. It's going into RHEL.
A lot of buy-in from Microsoft and Red Hat too is also real
Yep.
super
And then the
promising.
systemd system extension work, Microsoft's really pushing that.
Yeah.
And they're doing presentations together at All Systems Go. And the reboot thing, there is systemd soft reboot. We can probably remove a reboot or two there from some of the things. That's what I would love to do, is just make the entire thing even more and more invisible than it is.
They said it's not
Right?
perfect, right? There's
What's
still
that?
the systemd reboot, soft reboot.
A lot of the stuff, like the systemd system extensions and stuff, like we have them. People have them. Actually, Fedora is making one. Timothy Ravier is looking at using that as a systemd system extension to do the open.
I also heard from
Explorer.
someone on GNOME that it's also the TPM stuff, and then this is related to unified kernel images too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's a thing. That's definitely a thing.
But
That's
it's only like right now, only Fedora and Fedora, any of Fedora support the unified kernel images for that right now.
Oh, man, once we get all that, it'll be perfect. We'll be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are a few systemd system extensions. We're not really shipping any in production yet, because ideally I'd love to ship VS Code as an extension instead, right? That way you can remove it if you don't want it, and just rock with Z instead. Right now we just put that on the image.
I reported one issue to Zed.
Which was that?
There's a font issue on Linux only, not on Mac or Windows.
Nice.
That tries to italicize languages that can't be italicized.
Huh.
So if you try entering in, let's say, Arabic or Japanese, right?
Okay.
Text will try to be italicized, and then it just turns into a square, like one of the unidentified squares, because the font doesn't know what to do on Linux when there's a language that's italicized that can't be italicized.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
Oh, how you liking Z otherwise?
Don't use it.
Well, okay.
I only test drove it for one Saturday, and then it was like, hey, this is a problem. So I tested some stuff around and then just wrote up a bug report. Said, hey, this is what it is. But it seems, it's pretty simple, but I think that's what they want. It's a target. That's a great target audience to have, though, because a complaint that a lot of people have of VS Code, right, is it does too much.
Yeah.
Or it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But I feel like Zed kind of wants to go down that route too, but it's a different ecosystem because they have extensions and themes and
it's the old Atom folks, so they kind of were the VS Code before VS Code. So see, they get to start over. See, there's that greenfield again. It's always a nice thing when you can do something like that. But
yeah. Very last question from me.
All right, yeah.
What do you think it would take to get like the traditional user, like veteran buy-in, right? From you.
I don't care about veteran buy-in is my official answer. We don't need to convince anybody, right? I just need enough people to make it sustainable, and we proved that already.
But let's say it is the...
Okay. Let me give you the two-part answer then. Because first of all, I'm so overwhelmed by new people that are just getting started, and I could just teach them the right way, like right away, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're hurting the most, because that's where the most demand is, right? So that has to take up my time more than convincing someone who's perfectly happy with their Arch machine to switch, because you could just keep using your Arch machine. That's fine. Like I don't lose anything, right? And if you're using something else, like say Aeon, you're using Flatpaks. So as long as you're using Flatpaks, we're
But I
kind of
meant
all
like if the
complaining
whole
about the
world
same thing.
had that cloud native approach as the default, right? But there's still these people who are left, right? Like, what if the cloud native approach that
Uh-huh.
Bluefin or that Aeon or any other, or like, I don't know, even NixOS, why not, right?
Sure.
Is
Immutables.
is the
It's too
default,
late. You might as well just call it.
right?
Of course, it's the default. Why wouldn't it be?
No, when it no, like when if it when it is becoming the public hive mind that it is a default,
Uh-huh.
what would it take to get people to move then?
What, the traditional folks?
Yeah,
Well, I think at that point it's just like I prefer traditional old style Linux, right? You're like, I like Debian.
yeah.
I think they just stay there. I don't think anything happens to them.
Wouldn't say nothing, but
Wait, why? What do you think will happen?
well, I think Debian is hurting, but the signs are starting to show.
Yeah, but all open source like that. Are you talking about the contributors and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I just feel
Yeah,
like
I think that will happen. It will just take time, right? At some
okay,
point, someone's like, hey, wait a minute. Well, I have 37,000 distros trying to package LibreOffice.
yeah.
Or we just have the one
I've
LibreOffice.
had to explain that to people multiple times
Yeah, I
why.
think that just happens naturally. I don't think you're going to wake up one day and Debian goes away, right? Because
Yeah,
remember, people still use these on servers.
right.
All this kind of
NASA
stuff.
runs off of
Right, all the stuff I'm talking about, all these complaints about Linux, it's all desktop stuff, right? The server stuff has professionals handling it, right? So, like, first of all that stuff will always be there. I think for desktop, I don't think anyone's going to want to run anything else.
But what about a cultural thing that would need to be different, right?
Well, about who?
About like to make people to I don't want to say make people more accepting, but
Yeah,
to maybe change the mindset.
yeah, but why is that important to us,
Um,
right?
I would to ease the transition. I would think in
Oh,
my mind,
yeah,
right?
you could just try it though. You
Yeah,
know, like I mean, this doesn't have to be like a Wayland thing, where it takes like 35 years for people to move. It's
fair
literally
enough.
like, like look at how you use Linux. If you're fine with Flatpaks and like whatever, just try it. If you like it, you like it. If not, your old Linux doesn't go away, right? Um, but for us, I think we will always move faster because cloud native always moves faster. There's
Yeah,
right, you always move better together. Like if you have a problem with Bazzite, it's better when you have 300 people on the same image to help you,
yeah,
or whatever that number is. So I guess what I would say to somebody like that is if you look at what the first generation, using Ask Ubuntu as an example, right, where you would say, I had a problem with Ubuntu and I searched on the internet and I found a post and it told me to do these 5 things. And then we have this website and this forum where people are just sharing all this information. Isn't the Linux community great? Right? That's the first generation. Served us actually not so well. It's 3%.
yeah,
Did okay enough, I guess. Right? Um, Here's a better idea when one person figures it out, because this is config, not distro work. Put it in the image. Like, this is open source. Take the community is the biggest strength. That should be built into the operating system. You know what I mean? The best practice
yeah,
needs to be built into the operating system. And that's what we have. That's why we'll always move faster than the traditional Linuxes. Right. Now
yeah,
they'll be like, no, my version of Arch's kernel is like new or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. Right. Like I'm talking about like actually moving forward in feature sets and stuff. Because we could totally do a thing that we're based on Fedora, but it's a container. You can source that from anywhere. We could totally do an Arch thing that looks like this, right?
yeah.
Would you want to? No,
No,
not really. You know what's better than that? Letting Fedora do the hard work and then focus on what we got to do, getting games working, right? Or unlocking
I'll
cloud
be
native
honest. I
developers.
stopped using Arch 5 years ago because just
Yeah,
trying to the DIY. Here's an update. Good luck. Was just
yeah,
I I I gave up.
yeah. And most of our users are Arch users. They're just using an Arch distro box.
Yeah,
It's great. You can get anything you want. If you don't like Brew, use your Pac-Man. You always get the latest stuff in there, right? But your system will probably also boot every day.
but can I make a image, a uBlue image
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't need to have a registry?
No, 'cause it doesn't really work that way. Like that's like
Okay.
saying, can I have Debian without an apt repo?
Well, a little more.
You know?
Okay, well, maybe a little more simplified. If I have, if I is, I know you can build an ISO offline
Hmm.
because there are plenty of the projects out there have on your the
Yeah,
forums have said you can you can generate an ISO yourself because
yeah,
they didn't set it up through GitHub's build system or whatever.
yeah.
Um, but if I made my own changes, build my own ISO, would I continue to get updates?
You would have to rebuild that. So in that case, what I would say is like in your home lab, you would do it, or in your own machine, you would build the image and then boot off of it locally, which is
Right, but I mean, at
kind of low
once it's
gen.
installed, do updates flow?
No, you have to build a new image.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
That's why it's so clean
uh,
because we build a fresh copy of the operating system every day. That's what gets on your computer. There
yeah,
is no cruft that builds in. Colin calls this hysteris. I call it
yeah.
entropy and jank,
Well, something silly,
right?
right? Like, let's say
Yeah.
I make an image of the
Hmm.
base Silverblue image, but I just remove the disk usage analyzer,
Right. Okay.
right? Just something like that. But everything else is the same. Everything else is
Right.
just vanilla, just a vanilla system otherwise.
Yep.
I would still need to make a registry for this because it's technically recording a change.
Yeah, because you're building an image.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
kind of the thing.
Okay.
So that's what Blue Build does, right? Like they made a thing so it like makes it easier for you to make an image. That's why we tell people is you don't want to make an image. What you want to do is get together with your friends, right? And then figure out what your use case is. Be like, I want to make an image that
I am like crying because I need something like Secure Blue, but the problem with Secure Blue is there's too much stuff it changes that is just not necessary.
yeah,
Or
I get it.
because stuff that I want, but I can't because I'm a DaVinci Resolve user.
Yeah. But also remember that's also a tooling issue, right? Like Podman Desktop's gonna have a thing where you're just gonna like right click, whatever. There's gonna be a website where you go in there and you'll pick your packages. It'll give you the URL and you'll just rebase to that. Like, there's like a lot of tooling that you can make to get you what you want without you have to actually run your infrastructure.
Yeah.
Actually, people have said this. They're like, what you need to do is make builder.universal.do.org and you pick your packages and you click and then ISO comes
Yeah.
out and stuff. Yeah.
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 But
That sounds like
that's a lot of work to have.
that's a lot of work for something
Yeah.
no one will use, right? Like
Right.
or just give them Bazzite, right?
Right.
Which is why the numbers are bigger. Someone is going to build that stuff. It's just not going to be universal blue. That's not what we focus on. Blue Build focuses on that. There's like a few other other orgs are springing up because we don't like this isn't a thing that's a universal blue way. This is a cloud native way. So there's going to be tons of orgs. Different organizations. Helium OS is one. It's like uBlue, but they built on CentOS instead, right? Like there's going to be a whole bunch of orgs. Like we are not unique. The reason Bazzite and Bluefin are so awesome is they're not unique, right? They're OCI images, right?
Yeah.
And that we try to make that invisible. Where we're not yet to the point where everyone has realized, oh, I could just make one of these for my use case.
Yeah.
Right? It's just we happen to cover gamers and cloud native nerds. So if someone wanted to make, I wish someone would make a like a retro image with a bunch of old window managers and stuff already set up for you. Like you could make all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. Someone already made like the XFCE and the Budgie, right? And then
Yeah, we have those.
yeah,
Yeah, and then there's a prototype.
there's a Hyperland one somewhere.
Yeah, but we don't make that.
Yeah, I know it's
Um,
unofficial. It's
yeah. We have an atomic, not an atomic. What's this? A cosmic
cosmic.
one.
Yeah.
That was kind of a prototype. Onyx, which I think is Budgie. One of the tiling window mat is it
Sway. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ceresia.
Ceresia.
What a
That's right, we have
mouthful.
that. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people use that one.
I do, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We had Mate, but we recently sunset it because no one was using it.
Yeah. I use it on my de facto home theater computer.
Oh,
But really what it is,
Yeah.
it's the turn the Disney Plus on machine. It's not,
Yeah.
that's all it does.
yeah.
Or if I want to watch anime once everyone's in bed.
I'm trying to think if there's any other window managers. Are you missing any?
Oh, you're always missing some. There's like 20 something window managers.
Well, I
and
mean, missing ones that people use.
yeah.
Um,
Shots fired.
yeah, I'll ask. You know who's into this stuff? Matt at Linux. Not the
Linux
one
Cast.
that's
I mean, I know him.
Cast.
We talked.
Yeah.
We've talked.
Yeah, he's gonna do a Bluefin review too. I'm very interested in hearing what he has to say.
He's very much a traditional user. So
Yeah,
just
yeah. I told Matt, it's like I used to be like Matt, right? Like I was like, he did a video where he was like, the home directory on Linux is like the worst, like the dot files.
yeah, it's the worst thing ever made.
Yeah, and he's talking about like all the work he's putting in, like reorganizing them all and stuff. Where,
Give up.
yeah,
You're not
like,
fixing that thing.
I remember being like you, my poor
It's
child.
like trying to fix
Garbage.
Audacity. Oh, Audacity doesn't store in the folder. It's like give up.
Yeah,
It's not
so
going
I did
to.
that guy. It's just later on, like that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Rock and roll with your arch or whatever it is you got to go. But like eventually, once you get a job, like Linux, I don't even have time to change my wallpaper.
Yeah.
That's why we automate that. So
People ask me about my color scheme all the time. I'm just like, it's the default of the distro I'm running. I literally changed nothing.
ain't no one got time for that.
Yeah.
I agree.
I don't even set it as my kids. I don't even see the wallpaper. It's just like I can't. I just don't.
Yeah.
More.
That defaults lifestyle is what we're going for.
Yeah.
All right. I am
All right.
definitely ready
I know.
to crash.
It's enough of
Well, this
me
is pretty
too.
awesome. If you want to do it again sometime, I'm always down.
Of course.
I'm always down to hang out. If we want to go talk window managers with Matt at his live stream.
Oh my gosh, that'd be great.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Although,
well, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, my
awesome.
window manager stuff has been short-lived. To be honest, I used Awesome Window Manager way back when, but those days are behind me.
Window Maker.
Oh
Actually,
yeah,
moved from Enlightenment to Window Maker, which is weird back then.
Yeah.
Usually you move to Enlightenment, but it's like actually for those traditionalists, you have a phase, right? So I had an Enlightenment phase. Some people have their like Arch phase or whatever. At some point, you're just tired of phases and you're just an adult. You're fully grown.
You've
like,
grown
I know
up.
exactly what I want. Like I'm done
Yeah.
moving. This is my jam. But I do like to experiment, which is why I focus on containers and VMs and stuff. You just keep that stuff off your host.
Yeah.
So, all right.
So
I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
If you'd like to learn more, you can always learn more at universal-blue.org.
Blue.org. That's right.
Or is it
And then
Project
join our
Bluefin?
Discord, come hang out.
Yeah, projectbluefin.io and
Bazzite.gg.
Bazzite.gg. But Aurora has one too, right? It's Aurora.
Get Aurora.dev.
Yeah.
None of them
.dev.
match. That's so.
Yeah.
No.
Welcome to buying a website. It was so hard for me to get an 8-character domain name.
Man, and .dev is way cheaper now if you want to get one of those. But man,
Squarespace owns it.
Oh, really? I don't know. I just buy everything through Cloudflare.
Well, you can transfer to
Yeah.
Cloudflare if you buy it through Squarespace, but you have to buy it through Squarespace because they own it now. Google used to own it, so people would buy it through Google domains, but you can't right now because you buy it through Squarespace because they bought it from Google.
I bought Project Bluefin.dev, but I'm not forwarding it or anything yet.
Oh wait, you can't even because Cloudflare doesn't accept .dev as a top level domain.
I have it.
They do?
I have it in there. Yeah.
They do now? Oh, that's good news. They didn't use Cloudflare to registrar. Didn't used to accept .dev.
Oh yeah. Did
This
we
was
find
like
out what's
as
going
soon
on
as,
with
like, a year
IO?
ago.
Because that one's important to me. I should probably know.
No.
That. Someone of the CNCF should probably
let
know that.
Mauritania sort out their stuff, and we'll just have to wait.
Sounds amazing. Well, all right. You know
Yeah.
where to find me when it's not
All right.
Yep.
As always, be sure to like the video. Why don't you leave a like on the video? Leave a like on the video.
Smash that like and subscribe.
If you
button.
like all of George's hats.
Let them know. Be like, if you're on Team Destroy the Linux Desktop, come join me.
They have hats. It's a gift.
You know, one of the commenters will be like, actually think that I hate Linux, and they're gonna be like, this is another Linux Foundation conspiracy theory. Watch, I bet you $1 million. We'll see who will like.
But the
Or
Linux
they
desktop
watch
is,
the
if you
whole
pay
video.
the Linux Foundation, they must fix the Linux desktop.
I mean, good luck with that. Yeah, they're gonna say. Actually, that's good that you asked that. They're gonna say the same thing everyone else will tell you. Show me the money.
Yeah.
Because Linux runs.
If
the
it's not
rest
a
of the
money, it's
world,
an audience.
and we're a little busy, right? So you gotta.
If it's not money, it's an audience, right? right?
Yeah, make a better product. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So, all right.
If you're my
Take care,
audience, you're gonna like the video. Better like that video.
Yeah.
And go over to George's channel and watch his stuff when he releases stuff every couple months.
Every couple of months, hopefully. See, once we fix the operating system, we can just move on with it.